The month of September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month to raise awareness of the serious consequences of pediatric cancer. These ribbons symbolize the fight that we're all in together against pediatric cancer. Tonight we honor the tireless work of the Mary Wachowski Foundation and their impact on combating pediatric cancer right here in Hempstead town. Carol Wachowski faced the most devastating news any mother could have. And when her daughter was diagnosed, she found out that the research that was done to treat this type of pediatric cancer that affected her daughter was decades old because there was simply not enough funding. She took her personal tragedy and turned it into a mission to honor her daughter's memory every day, to raise money for the cure for this terrible disease. Thank you, Carol, for your tremendous impact and all the work you're doing to help children throughout our country and throughout our nation. We're grateful to you for your work and the organization and all that you do for our community here in the town of Hempstead. Thank you, Carol. So we present you today with a certificate of recognition from the town of Hempstead for the Mary Wachowski Foundation. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this regularly scheduled town board meeting. For those of you who have never attended a town board meeting before, first we will have public hearings followed by an administrative calendar. There are meeting agendas available in the rear of the pavilion. If you would like to be heard on any of the matters on our calendar, please go to the rear of the pavilion, fill out a slip, and hand it to the public safety officer. After our meeting is adjourned, the town board will follow our custom of 350 years and remain in session to hear any residents who would like to be heard and address the town board on any other matter. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Supervisor Gillen?
Here.
Councilman Blakeman?
Here.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Here.
Councilman Dunn?
Here.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby?
Here.
Councilman Muscarella?
Here.
I will note that you will notice that Councilwoman King-Sweeney is not here, as many of you probably know. She has resigned from her position and is moving to North Carolina. I am proud to have worked with Councilwoman Sweeney and partnered with her on so many initiatives like ethics reform, transparency legislation, saving our water testing lab, on Baldwin redevelopment, on marijuana and vaping legislation. She's been a great advocate for the residents in her district, and she will be missed, and we wish her the best of luck. Let's give a round of applause for Councilwoman.
Supervisor, if I move, will you say nice things about me?
Absolutely. Now I'd ask everybody to please stand, and Councilwoman Moscarella to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you please call our first public hearing?
Proposed local law regarding regulations and restrictions to limit parking in Elmont, Merrick, and West Hempstead.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and the local law adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeney?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pazino?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn? Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilman Moscarella?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding parking or standing prohibitions in East Meadow, Elmont, Garden City South, Inwood, Merrick, North Merrick, Oceanside, and Roosevelt.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Supervisor, I move that the public hearing be closed and the local law adopted.
Second motion.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pazino?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilman Moscarella?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding arterial stops in Merrick, near Valley Street, Levittown, and West Hempstead.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and that the local law be adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pazino?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilman Moscarella?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding bus stops in East Meadow.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Make a motion that we close the hearing and move the item. Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pazino?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilman Moscarella?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Proposed local law in relation to enacting a blanket prohibition on the sale of e-liquid flavored tobacco products.
Madam Supervisor, in view of the legislation that was passed, not passed, but ordered by the governor, and it is now in effect, we're waiting for a copy of that law so we can tweak what we are doing if necessary, or applaud what he's done. But right now, at this point, not knowing if we're being redundant or not, we're going to pull this. I'd like to make a motion to pull this from today, and should we adjourn it for? We're going to adjourn it and for the future day.
Second.
I agree, Councilman. I think that is a prudent approach in view of the pending state legislation on this item.
Not to belittle this or make it look any less a problem than there is. Right now, we heard this morning that there's over 513 more cases in the hospital of kids with lung linings, which is indicative of vaping diseases, and they're hooked up to all sorts of tubes and machines. It's awful. Something's got to be done about it. If the state government isn't adequate enough, then we're going to do something about it, but we're going to wait and see rather than be redundant. But, you know, I'm glad that it has been addressed on the state level, but now we can vote on the item. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the adjournment of this item.
Supervisor Gillen.
Speak on the adjournment.
I'd like to speak on the adjournment, please.
What item is it?
Can I speak on the adjournment, please? I'm not, I,
Mr. Rob, did you speak on adjournments? No.
Yes, we do.
You can
we have before.
Public session.
You can speak in public session on it. Madam Clerk, I don't know, did you start calling the roll?
Supervisor Gillen.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
First, I'd like to congratulate Councilman Dunn for taking the leadership on this. I am pleased that Governor Cuomo is addressing this matter. So I will vote aye to adjourn it to wait and see what the state regulations are.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby.
I would also like to thank Councilman Dunn because he started this quite some time ago. We did have a press conference on it. We realized how important it was. We did this conference before. So I certainly will vote yes.
Is,
Councilman Muscarella.
Aye.
is the Woodmere Club any different than this kind of adjournment?
Madam Clerk, may you call the next public hearing, please? Ms. Gordon, please don't shout out from the audience.
I'm just asking a question. You change the
Madam Clerk,
rules all
please
the
call the next
time.
public hearing.
Proposed local law entitled Building Construction Administration in order to strengthen the restrictions on building department employees from engaging in activities which are inconsistent with or create a conflict of interest with their duties or with the interest of the building department.
Mr. Procacci?
Felix Bocacci. I just have to say this, when we adjourned the Woodmere Club, the residents did get to speak on the adjournment. And it's not fair that you changed the rules. On the building construction administration law, I read through what they have here. The question, and maybe I can't find it, is how is this enforced and what's the penalties if it's violated?
Mr. Pittman, would you like to speak on this issue?
Council, to the supervisor. Good evening. The penalty would be a potential violation of the ethics code under Chapter 38. So it would be referral to the ethics board. The ethics board could make a decision on the matter, and then it could potentially result in disciplinary action against the employee.
Okay, I have a problem with that because the ethics board is a political board, and I'm not sure what they know about building construction. And my experience with the previous ethics board, a very simple case, my view, but whatever, they took 6 months to get back to me, only to tell me that they weren't empowered to take my complaint. And I understand there's a ethics complaint against a employee currently, and that's over a week, which should have been 50 days ago when I first brought forth that violation. I didn't even want to bring it to the ethics board because I know it would be ignored. And
There is a new ethics board that has just been impaneled. However, one of the members of the ethics board has just resigned.
which one?
Mr. Morano,
But
he's appointed by the Republican majority.
so are they allowed to work with 4?
Mr. Robb, I think they have to make another appointment. We're talking about the vacancy that has just arisen in the newly formed ethics board.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking with Councilman Dunn. The question was what?
So Mr. Procacci is asking about the ethics board, and he said that the new ethics board was just impaneled. The last appointment was made, I believe, at the last board meeting by the senior councilwoman. However, someone has already resigned. And so Mr. Procacci's question is, can the ethics board move forward with a vacancy, or do we need to appoint someone before we can move forward?
Well, we hope to have someone appointed very shortly, but we are looking at some of the complaints that we have, so we did start looking at those.
Has the ethics board convened, Mr.
Not
Rogers?
right now.
I did send a letter to the ethics board asking them to convene.
Okay, there's a real problem with the ethics board, and I said it when you put this thing together, being that I don't think a political body should be selecting a ethics board. It doesn't mix. I don't care who the political body, how it's constituted, they should be picking it. What I would recommend you do in this building construction thing and all the laws in the town of Hempstead, that you state a penalty. You state a penalty for violation. In the compliance officer law, for example, for that employee, there's a stated penalty for certain kinds of violations, but not other kinds of violations. Then everything gets referred to the ethics board, which means it goes on a 6-month hiatus where nobody knows, it's all a secret court, and which is not fair to the public. If I report somebody in building construction doing something wrong, let's say it was my house, I have to wait 6 months, follow up with these ethics board people, follow up with the town board, they don't even get back to you. I says, that's not really right. It needs to be a transparent process so people should be able to see what's going on. So the ethics board as constructed is wrong. The selection is wrong. It should never be by the political body. It should be by outside people selecting the ethics board with no connection to the town board. And this shows the problem right here, that now if something happened tomorrow in building construction, who knows how long the resident would have to wait.
Thank you, Mr. Prakashi. Rory Gordon?
Lori Gordon, Hop, New York. 86-4, the restrictions on employees that you are amending, how long has the original 86-4 been on the books? Do you have any idea?
I don't know offhand, but I can get back to you with that information.
But has it been like a few years, or is it something that just was like recently voted since you've been in office?
The 86, what?
It's a long-standing provision.
It's a long-standing.
Okay, that's just all I was trying to establish. And since the 86-4, prior to what you're going to change it to, how many times has this actually been instituted in the town of Hempstead where anybody was penalized for doing the basic law? No officers or employees of the building department shall engage in any activity inconsistent with his duties or with the interest of the building department, nor shall he, during the term of his employment, be engaged directly or indirectly in any building business. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but has anybody ever been penalized for this?
I'm not aware of any times that that's happened. That's part of the reason why we put this resolution forward.
That's only in your term. Would Mr. Rob Kemp be able to tell us if anybody's been penalized?
Off the top of my head, I'm not aware of anyone.
I'm sorry?
I said I'm not aware of anyone being penalized under that, but that doesn't mean ever is a very long time.
It's common knowledge when you go into the building department that several of the employees in the building department, they have side businesses that are related. And I'm sure that this is being passed. It probably has something to do with someone that was recently indicted. But I, as Felix, have the same concern. What exactly is going to be done? Because it seems like you guys pass laws and then nobody gets in trouble for the laws that you write. And it's been like that since I've been coming to meetings, over and over and over again. And just to pass laws to blow smoke up everybody's skirt just doesn't seem like a logical thing to do. So, I don't know. Who's going to decide if somebody broke the law here?
I think that's a fair comment, and we'll take a look at making sure there's timely response to complaints to the ethics board, and also to make sure that our laws are enforced. One of the other resolutions that's put on the agenda tonight has to deal with nepotism in the town of Hempstead. We passed ethics reform legislation that's trying to root out nepotism and people supervising their relatives. The problem is it's difficult to enforce it because I don't know, and I don't know if everybody here knows who the relatives are. So in order to be able to enforce our code, we really need to know who's related to whom. So that's an item that's going to try to help us enforcement. So I think you raise a fair point, and certainly something we can look at to try to strengthen these laws.
Yeah, we got like a bunch of Schwarzes working here and a bunch of Rockham's working here, and you know, like there's a whole bunch of people, they got all their relatives working here. You should do like one of those big pie charts, you know, and kind of like in your office, put it on the wall and see who's all related. Thank you, Supervisor, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. I do not have any other slips on this public hearing. Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard?
Rita J. Meriday, Baldwin resident, full voice tonight.
I'm glad you got your voice back in there today.
Me too, thank you so much. All right, with regard to the issue at hand, first I agree, I concur with Mr. Wakachi and Ms. Gordon with regard to not being able to speak on the blanket prohibition. I do believe whether there are 2 residents or 20, there was an issue that was on the agenda for this evening, and those who were able to attend this evening should have had an opportunity to speak on that particular issue, to at least have it on the record. So I just wanted to speak to that. With regard to this building construction administration, my concern basically is why are we stopping there? It just seems like we either follow a News 12 undercover story or something happening in Newsday before we actually enact the legislation that should have been in place and should have been administered and should have been executed to begin with. And we are becoming beyond an embarrassment with the lack of scrutiny and transparency and oversight within a number of our departments. And I also feel that the building department sometimes is getting unjustly spotlighted all the time for the work that they do and the resources, the lack of resources that they have. You know, there's good and bad in all situations. So that is my concern with regard to why are we stopping there, 1. 2, as Ms. Gordon pointed out, what is the enforcement? Because again, that is also a joke. You know, we waste a lot of paper. You know, you guys do a lot of photo ops and you make a lot of statements in Newsday and News 12. But residents are still leaving here in droves, and we have many that are still living in fear because of the taxes and the costs and the lack of services. And many of us don't have the relationships to get jobs. We have the background, we have the experience, but we don't have the familiar relationships. We don't have the deep pockets to go to all the fundraising events so that we can be, you know, put in a position to get the work. So if you're going to do this with regard to the law and you're going to make sure that it has some impact, let's this time make sure that it actually does have some impact and it doesn't come off of the backs of residents, or let's just say the fleeing backs of residents, because so many are leaving, and many of the others are suffering, particularly our seniors who cannot leave. But our veterans, our young veterans, our older veterans, we're not doing them a service by continuing to put these things on paper but not into practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meredith. Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on this public hearing?
I propose the law be closed and be adopted.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Bazita?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby?
Aye.
Councilman Muscarella?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed handicap parking on public streets in Baldwin, East Meadow, Elmont, Franklin Square, Inglewood, Oceanside, Uniondale, New Valley Street, and Wyandotte.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and the item be adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Bazita?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby?
Aye.
Councilman Muscarella?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed improvement and adoption of certain roads within Island Park, Barnum Isle, into the town of Hempstead highway system near Island Park, Barnum Isle.
Supervisor, before we hear from concerned residents that are here this evening, I actually spoke with some of the residents today, and I know they had a chance before the meeting to meet with Deputy Commissioner Tierney. And they do have concerns with regards to adopting certain roads that are near their homes. So I am not adjourning the item because I know that they're here and they're sitting and we're going to let them speak. But I do want to let them know that I am going to be reserving decisions so that we can coordinate with the building department and the Department of Engineering to meet their needs and figure out how to do this in the right way.
Okay, we have a number of slips on this public hearing. We have Paul Velasco.
My name is Paul Velasco. I live in Allen Park, LA, Place North. My concerns are if they raise the road a foot high, what happens to our driveways, our fences, and our lawns?
Commissioner, could you address that?
How you doing, Dr. Chairman, Commissioner Medner? The details of this road raise will be discussed at a public hearing, a public meeting, which I believe is 2 weeks from now. Obviously, all the affected residents will be invited to that. But to answer your question, generally what happens is anything that is disturbed is replaced in kind. Depending on where you are, what the elevation is of your current residency and what the elevation of the road will determine basically what the elevation of the new property will be once it's restored. But generally everything is restored in kind, and it's designed in such a way that you won't be flooding obviously any more than you are. The purpose is to raise the road and prevent flooding of the road itself.
On our driveways, if you lift the road up a foot, that means our driveways will be underneath the...
Yeah, so we deal with the situation a lot. It's a little hard to say exactly how your property will be affected without looking at the plans. Like I said, we're going to have a meeting in 2 weeks from now where we meet with all the affected residents. In addition to that, we meet with each resident one-on-one because we need their sign-off before we can even proceed. So you'll know in great detail exactly how your property would be affected. But if you are in a case where basically we're raising the road and it appears that your driveway will be back pitched, what traditionally happens in that scenario is we add a yard drain to your property for rainwater that would be flowing onto your property. But it's a little hard for me to say offhand without looking at the plans. And like I said, nothing proceeds without getting your sign off before we move ahead. This was just a resolution to adopt certain roads that were being added that the town doesn't own, but that are within the scope of the project, and that's what this resolution was about. Passing this resolution doesn't mean the project moves forward; it just means those roads get adopted.
All right, thank you very much.
So, Commissioner, just to be clear, so this resolution is just adding certain roads to the GOSER project. It's not approving the project in total.
Correct. Like I said, the project doesn't move forward unless the residents sign off on it.
Does that help you, sir? Thank you. Cheryl Dietzel?
I was happy to hear that Councilman Diaz-Esposito said we're not going to make a decision tonight, because literally we had somebody come and hand letters to us yesterday, so we don't have a whole lot of time to sit down and think this over what the repercussions are going to be on that. So I thank you for that. Maybe we could actually meet one day with all of us, because we have several people here from Atlantic Place North, which is going to be the most affected road, because that's the road that the drainage is going to go down. We had road construction before. They did work on the draining there once before, about 10 years ago. And they basically destroyed my property. It cost me a fortune to put everything back. And of course, we were promised everything's going to be great, everything's going to be wonderful, we're going to fix everything better than it was before, which absolutely did not happen. So we're a little gun shy on this whole entire project, and we're a little gun shy on giving up a private road. Right now, we have jurisdiction over our road. We don't know what the pros and cons are. We haven't had time to look into it. As I said, we just got the letter yesterday. So I do appreciate you holding off on it.
Thank you, ma'am. Ryan Cicimaro, I'm sorry if I didn't say that right.
Hi. So my concern is if we give this road up and it's no longer private, the only way they would do the work is by adopting this road, correct?
Commissioner, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, that's correct.
10 years ago when they redid the drains and the roads, how come they didn't need it then? Why do they need it now?
I can't speak to what happened 10 years ago because I was not here. Commissioner, do you know the answer to that?
I believe what he's referring to is that we do have existing easements there, drainage easements, and we may potentially be able to use that drainage easement in this particular case, but the idea here was that we wanted to redo and fix the entire road using the GOZER funds, so basically try to get our biggest bang for the buck and give you guys a new road. But yeah, probably what happened in the past was we used the existing drainage easements to do the work that we needed to do. In this case, we're trying to do a larger scope project. So we would need to essentially own the road to do that. Because we can't use, our own dollars to fix private property, essentially.
With that, if we give up the road as a private road, there is a piece of property at the end of the dead end that is trying to get a variance right now to build 3 houses, and they're calling it a driveway, taking the curb, breaking it down, and building a driveway to get 3 more houses back there at the end of our dead end. By giving up the private road, that's our argument in the hearings we have right now, that that's a private road and you can't do it. By giving that up is going to be giving up that variances and getting it approved for them to do this project that we don't really want done over there. It's going to take up all the parking in the street that is barely there now. We all have grandkids, children that love to play on the dead end block. We would be losing all of that. I don't have a yard big enough to play with right now, so when my kid is old enough, I'd love to be able to play with them in the street. Giving up this private road is going to give them that variance that they want.
I completely understand your concern. Us adopting this road does not equate to that person receiving the variance, 2 separate issues. But I think what the councilman has suggested, which is that essentially this item be adjourned or tabled, might be the best way to approach this. It shouldn't hold up the project itself in any form. We could sit down with you and we could alleviate any of those concerns and make sure that this won't lead to the situation.
And Commissioner, just on the record so I can be clear, in making a decision this evening, as long as the board goes with my recommendation, this is not in any way jeopardizing any of our CRP funds or jeopardizing any of the projects in the area, correct?
No, we're not at that point. This is just something that needed to get done. It doesn't need to get done today, but it's not.
So if we take a few more weeks to discuss this with the residents, there's no concern that anything from the state will be jeopardized.
Correct. And I apologize because we did hand out those letters yesterday in an attempt to make sure all the residents are properly informed about what we were doing today. But yeah, I think it might be in the best interest to thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Just, I'll go on record saying, even if we do keep that road private, you have my permission to do whatever work you want on it and get that drainage done.
Thank you, sir. Walter Dietzel?
Good evening, I'm Walter Dietzel, 122 Atlantic Place North. Everything was pretty much said. I want to thank Mr. D'Esposito. I'm looking forward to meeting with you and discussing that. Also, Mr. Tierney for being kind enough to spend some time with us prior to this meeting. My concerns are the same as my neighbors. We're in 100% right here on our block. There's only 3 residents and we're all here, so we are very, very concerned about, what's going to happen here. As my wife stated before, we've gone through this before and we were promised everything and really didn't get a lot. I have a problem. I'm the only waterfront property on the block, and things weren't done properly by the construction company that did this project before, especially with the storm drainage. They made a lot of promises that they were going to be catch basins to catch the cans, the bottles, and the large debris. That was never done. They said that frequently they were going to clean the catch basin that wasn't there, and obviously that's why they didn't clean it, because it's not there. They were also supposed to put a concrete slab down so when the water does drain out of that drain, it doesn't undermine the bottom of the canal. They never put the concrete slab down there either. Now the older storm drain did have that concrete slab. Now I was told that maybe concrete's not the way to go anymore, but I'm sure there is some kind of a material that can be used to keep this from eroding. The other question I had, and it's probably not the time or place to ask it, but I have to ask, is I don't understand why they can't run the drainage down Saratoga and out Shell Creek, where the canal is 30 foot deep and has a very strong current. We're on a dead-end canal where there's no current at all, and the canal itself is only 7 feet deep. I've been there almost 25 years, and since I've been there, our canal is filled in well over 2.5 feet. Now, again, I'm the only one on the canal, so it affects me more than my neighbors. I have a hoist. When I first moved there, I was able to get my boat on and off of the hoist anytime. Now, I have to pick and choose my times because at low tide, I can't get the boat off. I have to come back early because I can't get the boat back on. So one of my issues is that, you know, we're putting another storm drain in. Is that going to increase the damage now? You know, I don't know, but this is something that we can discuss. And also someone mentioned that there's a meeting in 2 weeks. Will we be notified in due time, not, you know, the day before?
Commissioner Truman, the meeting in 2 weeks, the notifications will go out? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll send out notification. It seems, Mr. Diesel, that these are really serious concerns that you raise and that we want to. I thank Councilman Diaz-Canzito for raising this issue tonight. I think it is prudent for us to really listen to the community and make sure all your concerns are allayed before we move forward and take a vote on this.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Chris Fabris?
Hello, thank you. Chris Fabris, 134 Atlantic Place South, Island Park. I'm very familiar with the Ghost Project. I greatly appreciate this coming our way and all the hard work that you guys are going to be putting forward. I'm here representing my neighbors. They're pretty elderly as well. They can't, at 85 and 92, they can't get out. Take care of them, and you know, I've got an earful before I get into the meeting. Our main concern with Atlantic Place South is if you look at where Atlantic Place South and Atlantic Place North are. After Sandy, I think Walter had 2 boats in his yard. My neighbor Ronnie had 2 boats, and I had another boat on the dead end. So when the storm comes from the east, that whole side of town just gets bombarded. Furthermore, there's a school not too far from there. So I know the scope of work has been is pretty elaborate. Surveys have been done time and time again. You can look at data all you want, but unless you physically come down and meet with the neighbors and pinpoint certain things. I've been on the canal since, since I was born. My grandparents came there in 1939. I'm happy to still be on the canal. But there's so much that goes into the maintenance of the dead ends and where the volume of water comes from and the debris. We take a brunt all winter long. And if they're going to do Atlantic Place South, and they're not going to do it fully, meaning from start to finish, I don't see the point in even starting the work at all. So our main concern is, yes, there's a tentative plan, but we're hoping that somebody can come down, meet with the neighbors, maybe point out some certain things. I can certainly document some photographs, but currently, since Sandy, the road at the very end of the dead end is sinking. You know, the curb is now level with the concrete. So the water is actually going over the curb, undermining, freezing. But just, again, grateful for the opportunity, and I hope that they can come down and take a more granular look. And when you physically see things with the eye, opposed to, the surveys and the papers and where drainage is going to go, it certainly brings things to light. And
Chris, what we'll do is Commissioner Tooman and I will, he'll speak to you right after the meeting. We'll set up a date. I'll come down and we'll walk the block and go from there.
great. And last but not least, I'm here supporting my neighbors. We look at each other's houses, and where they're tentatively trying to put 3 homes on a piece of property. This is not somebody from the community. This is somebody that saw a piece of property, got it for a good price. They're trying to rezone it, flip it, make a quick buck, and send their kids to college or something. So it's really unfortunate because they have a great block and they're a great bunch of friends. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I do not have any other slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard?
Community Mayor, I'm concerned with regard to the utilization, I guess, of GOSA funds. And I'm just curious as to what level of priority does this project have when we still have many residents, when the mention of Sandy, we still have many residents who are not even in their homes, who are in jeopardy of losing their homes, who are still living and paying rental and paying taxes on properties that they can't live in. So I'm just curious, what is the priority for this project?
I don't think the GOSA funds are for people in their homes. I think the GOSA projects were all infrastructure projects. I guess that would be another plan set forth by the state, but all the GOSA projects are infrastructure related, nothing to do with putting people in and out of homes.
GOSA funds are being used for elevating homes.
So I think that's New York Rising.
But some of that funding...
Right, but it's 2 separate programs.
Okay, well, residents that are, hearing about GOSA, or they're hearing about something that has to do with storm relation, and they're not living in their home and they're about to be foreclosed, after a while, it's state money. Is it not state money?
It's state money, but it's state money that's earmarked for the people at this point of Island Park. And just like weeks ago, there was money that was earmarked for people of Oceanside, or Point Lookout, or Lido, or Atlantic Beach.
But if you have residents that are here that are saying that they want to have a closer look, I'm still curious as to hearing that we want to make sure that the GOSA, we're getting the bigger bang for the buck.
I understand, but we don't choose where the GOSA money goes. The projects are already coordinated with the state, who then works with the town of Hempstead and then subcontracts contractors to do the work. We don't get the money and choose between putting people in or out of their homes or doing a street over. Commissioner Tooman, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's correct.
But it is also based upon recommendations from, again, they're not deciding this just basically from using some Google map and saying, okay, we'll put this money here.
No, there were groups put together probably within months of the aftermath of Sandy for each communities that were represented. They started off as the community reconstruction zones, then they went to the community reconstruction project. There was groups in the 5 towns, groups in Island Park and Oceanside, groups all on the Barrier Island who were affected by Sandy. And they put their thoughts together in order to come up with projects that would improve infrastructure in their communities. That's what the money was earmarked for originally. It had nothing to do with putting people in and out of their homes.
Mr. Tooman, could you just explain the GOSA application process and how that process works?
Can I just interject something, Commissioner? It's my understanding that these local committees made their own self-determination of what they thought the priorities were in their community, and it was set up by the governor's office in that the committees were appointed by the state representatives. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I wasn't here for that process. I do think you explained it well, the council, Mr. Diaz-Vizito, Councilman Diaz-Vizito explained it well. Yeah, committees were put together, this was years ago, and then projects were selected. It was a very long process, and we're very far from the beginning of that process, and this is where we are today. So all that money has already been slated, budgeted, and is for these particular projects and for these particular areas. We couldn't even move the money around if we wanted to. Not that we're the state, but the state itself doesn't have the ability to do that. All the money's already been slated for these particular projects, and it's based out of community meetings and these hearings that happened very early on when the decisions were made on how the money should be used.
I get that, but GOSA, for people who may not know, is Governor's Office for Storm Recovery. So that storm recovery, The governor also had a plan that was in place to raise homes a certain level and provided $100,000, which was a ridiculous fee for the weight and size and distribution of the home. And then FEMA said, no, it's 40 feet. So my concern again is that we're talking about, again, apples and oranges with the same raisins and prunes that the residents have to put up with, since we live in a county where we pay the second highest taxes in the country.
But
So
it
we're
is
talking about,
it is apples and oranges, that's what we're trying to explain.
I understand
The
all that.
apples that we're trying
I
to
understand that.
correct infrastructure, and the oranges of raising houses. And we're using this money for the apples because that's what it was earmarked for.
Well, if we're talking about apples then, if we're talking about roads, then the issue is, where are we going, where are we with the roads that still need to be fixed, if that's the case? If we're talking about acquiring a private road when the residents don't necessarily are in fear, justifiably so, of what's going to happen when they get their privacy snatched because the town takes over the road, and for those of us who have to live with town roads where the craters are going down to where the pilgrims used to roll around on this land. So yes, there is a concern for those of us who still want the town roads that we pay for to get fixed. So if anybody has a concern about the zoning processes in this township, be very concerned about that and continue to come to these meetings. Because rest assured, Sandy was 2012. We're now in 2019. Go to the South Shore, as you well know, in East Rockaway, because I live in Baldwin, and we had students from East Rockaway High School in the empty school building that we had to fight the town and the county to keep from tearing down. So yes, I am very concerned about infrastructure, and I'm very concerned about every piece of fruit in the basket that I have to pay these high taxes for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maridan. I do not have any other slips in this public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and the proposed improvement and adoption of certain roads within Island Park, we reserve decision for a further date.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakely? Aye. Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? And Councilman Moscarella?
Madam Clerk, will you please call the decision calendar?
There is one item on the decision calendar. This is the application of S&S Realty Inc. for a modification of declaration of restrictive covenants affecting real property located on the northeast corner of Atlantic Avenue and Davidson Avenue in Oceanside.
May I have a motion on the item?
I move that we approve the decision.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakely?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Aye. Councilman Moscarella?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the administrative calendar?
There are items 10 through 58 on the administrative calendar. I also have two resolutions that are of an urgent or emergency nature. This is the resolution amending resolution number 360-2019 in relation to real property tax relief for Cold War veterans. This will be item number 59 on the calendar. I also have a resolution authorizing the commencement of litigation, and this will be item number 60 on the calendar.
Would any of the council members like to sever any of the items on the administrative calendar?
Yes, I move that we adjourn without date 17, 37, 39, 40, 42, and 43.
Would you please explain why you're going to adjourn all these items without date?
Yeah, it was discussed in caucus, and the caucus has decided that we will be adjourning 17, 37, 39, 40, 42, and 43.
Can you say that one more time?
I move to amend item 53 to hold a public hearing on the proposed local law on November 12, 2019.
Second.
Okay, well, we have two different motions going on now. First, we have a motion to adjourn items 17, 37, 39, 40, 42, and 43. Just to be clear for everybody in the audience, Item number 17 is a resolution to award a contract to Novus Agenda to try to get typewriters out of our clerk's office. It's an item that's been worked on for an extensive amount of time with the cooperation of the clerk, the IT department, and our chief technology officer, with the participation of everybody sitting here, the majority, and the various relevant departments, to try to modernize our clerk's operations, to improve efficiencies in the clerk's office. Madam Clerk, do you have anything you'd like to add about this item?
May I ask a question first before she does? Do you have any typewriters in your office?
Yes.
Okay, you have to have some, don't you? Because there's some things you cannot put in a computer, you must use a typewriter, am I correct?
Yes.
How many typewriters do you need to use in order to be able to do some of the documents that come out of your office?
How many in total would we need to use?
Yes.
We certainly don't need to use 72. There's 72 right now.
Okay, so how many people do you have working with those, and those are items that you do not want anyone else to copy, that you use a typewriter for, am I correct?
I'm sorry, that I don't want to.
There are some items that must be used, and you must use a typewriter, because, okay.
Yes, there's.
Well, listen, let me finish. The only reason I'm saying this is because people have been told in this community, I'm tired of people giving the wrong information. You don't give the wrong information to the public. You must let them know there are some things that you have to use a typewriter for. Not for everything, a lot of things you don't. And I tell you, the other thing what I'm concerned about, number 17, you go ahead, I'll tell you what my concern is about it. Go ahead.
Okay. Supervisor, as you know, since I took office, I've tried my best to make the services in the clerk's office as accessible and as modern as possible. That's what I told people I was going to do, and that's what I continue to do. Before I took office, I studied the issue of Novus Agenda. I attended the Clerks Association meeting. I've spoken to clerks from both political parties, and both agree that it is a fantastic thing for the clerk's office. Several municipalities, including New York City Council, North Hempstead, several municipalities use it. We've held several different meetings to discuss this, including March of 2018, May of 2018, June of 2018, September of 2018, October of 2018, February of 2019, April of 2019. We had meetings with different people in the departments, as the supervisor said. Several of the staff here, of the council people, were also included. Many expressed what an excellent idea it would be. As stated, there are typewriters, and absolutely, senior councilmen, some typewriters are definitely needed in the office because certain forms, we need to use the typewriter to get that information on. But Novus Agenda is, for people to understand, is a program whereby our calendar would be generated. Presently, the system that we have now is very paper-centric. Sometimes it's very hard to find, the relevant information. Things get lost. I just think that this would be more efficient. You would be able to search. You could put in one word, and you'd be able to search the agenda. Whatever information you wanted would be able to pop up. So it would be just very user-friendly. There's so many reasons why it would be a great thing for the town. We're the largest town. We should be leading by example. This is technology. I think it's extremely important that we, in such a large township, that we do things in the most efficient manner possible. There's a lot in terms of the hand-ups. I know that was an issue. Hand-ups would also, we would be able to deal with that on paper. That system would not necessarily need to change. It's a shame that you want to adjourn it, because I think it's in the best interest of the town of Hempstead. Many municipalities use it, and it's been tremendously successful everywhere. So there's no reason that it shouldn't be implemented here. But if that's what the town board wants to do, I'll respect your opinion. And
Madam Clerk, wouldn't it also improve transparency, because it would generate an agenda that would be searchable for residents?
Right.
It would generate the agenda in a more time-efficient manner. It would save work hours and make it easier for your staff, easier for the clerk's staff, so people aren't walking items from the agenda all around town hall like they do right now.
Having to get.
All right, so that's what number 17 is that they're trying to adjourn. Number 37.
All those items
Right, but
I think it's time to vote.
no, I think the public has a right to know. Excuse me, I am the chair of this meeting. The public has a right to know what is being adjourned. Number 37 is an item relating to the Department of Occupational Resources. Please don't shout out. If you shout out, you'll be warned once, and if you shout out again, you'll be asked to leave. Number 37 is an item from the Department of Occupational Resources. The commissioner has actually requested that we adjourn that item. And he can speak to why if there's a question about that. Number 39 relates to property management. When I got to town hall, we tried to find out what properties the town owned, and there was not a list. The town did not have a list of all the properties they owned. Did you get that, Jesse? The town of Hempstead did not have a comprehensive list of all the properties that they owned. And so we went out and we got a consultant to help us figure out what properties the town owns. And we found out that we own things like parking lots. Parking lots that benefit commercial property owners, and we bear all the burden. We have, if someone falls down, the town of Hempstead gets sued. We have to plow it, we have to maintain it, and the commercial tenant that gets the benefit of this property doesn't pay anything. So if someone goes to their store and falls down, the town gets sued and we have to pay. There's no benefit for the town, only benefit for the commercial property owner. This should have been addressed years ago. It was never addressed. So what this resolution is trying to do is to bring in a consultant to look at all the properties the town owns and generate revenue from idle properties. That's number 39. Number 40. Excuse me, you can speak after I'm done speaking.
Well, I'd like to go
Number
item by
40.
item.
No.
I would just like to go item by item on this particular matter, Supervisor. It is a fact that every property that the town owns is on the tax rolls and it's easily identifiable. But if you would like, our budget advisor has a list of that and we'll compile it and put it together.
My administration put it together. Mr. Haber, would you please listen?
May I say what I have to say? Just 1 minute. Now, I know Mr. Haber's doing this. Mr. Haber came to me with a list of properties in Roosevelt. And in Roosevelt, we have very little property left that's large enough to do anything. And I told him that we're not going to do anything with those properties over there that are in that area. We want to put all those houses in there. Roosevelt is full of homes already. They took all the properties that we had for commercial development, and that's what they did. The small amount that we have, the residents will determine how they're going to be used. Some of them are not large enough to even do a bank or anything else, just like some of the things in Uniondale. You want to build things they want to build in there that should not be built. We don't need any more laundromats and things of that nature. So it is something that we need to let the residents decide what they want where they live. And why should we pay people? I know everything is in Roosevelt.
On Roosevelt, we have a parking lot that benefits a supermarket, and there's tons of problems with that parking lot. And last year, the town taxpayers had to pay to repave that parking lot that benefits the supermarket.
Well, that's
the supermarket owner should have paid to repave that parking lot, and not the tenants of this town. Mr. Haber, was there a comprehensive list of properties?
We would not have a supermarket in Roosevelt if we did not take care of those parking lots. We have to, because that's what was done for people before I even got on the board. That's what happened.
It's funny because I talked to the owner of that parking lot and I asked him if he would buy the parking lot from us, and he said if it was a reasonable price he would.
Well, we'll see about that, because people need that too. That's called Roosevelt.
Madam Supervisor, this goes way beyond just a parking lot or an idle lot in Roosevelt. I've been in the commercial real estate business for 20 years, and everywhere you go, you want to know what you own and how you can monetize it and how you can actually increase your revenue or decrease your costs. When I got here, I asked for a list of the town properties. I thought it would be an easy thing to obtain. Somebody dropped off 3 CDs at my desk that were done 20 years ago with a video camera, not by section, lot, and block, not by property type, but just by video, and not saying any addresses. It was something that I thought was a joke at first, and then I realized it wasn't. We went through an extensive RFP. We chose a company to create a database to just show exactly what the town owns. And nobody in the town had any idea what we owned. Sliver lots, parking lots, vacant lots. things that were not maintained, things that were just sitting there for decades, if not forever. And it turns out the town owns over 750 pieces of property, over $4 billion of real estate with a B. And there's plenty of things you can do to monetize them, or at least know that you have them. And one of the reasons why this is...
Excuse me, how did you arrive at that number?
So if you look at the report with respect to the town board, they went through every piece of property through the maps of counties, assessed value, and that's where the value came from. I'm happy to share that report.
But Mr. Haber, my understanding is that the vast majority of those properties, you can't build anything on, they're so small.
That's in some...
And he wants to put them all in my district.
building the property.
So Mr. Haber, you know where the properties are now?
Yes, we do.
So why do we have to hire this firm at an expense?
First of all, it's not an expense, it's on a...
Well, they get a broker's commission.
Well, anybody would dispose of your property. There's 35 sliver lots.
So we're giving an exclusive real estate brokerage agreement to a company that basically there was no competitive process for this?
There was, Councilman Blakeman, there was an exhaustive RFP where you had 6 responses with all the best names in the business. And then you have a very competitive rate.
Do you have an analysis of that you can give us?
Was a representative of the town board majority at this meeting?
I was not in that process, but yes, they had somebody from the town board who was doing everything in the process.
I was not there. You did come to my office with some things that you wanted. I know the residents don't want it. It's, first of all, they like to have a space too, so they can breathe. They don't have a space to breathe. They can't even build a ballpark for the children.
Ms. Sinclair, do you know who was on this review panel?
Yeah, Shelley Breesley.
That's from Councilwoman Guzzi's office?
Yeah, as well as Richard Gina, but also...
That's council to the town board majority, right? So representative from Councilwoman, Senior Councilwoman's office, and from the town board majority on this panel.
But I also want to make clear, after we went through the initial study to identify these properties, we did, by request of council to the town board, deliver detailed lists with maps of this information months ago, notifying them of our intent to proceed with the disposition plan.
The committee made a recommendation?
Yes.
And you're saying, and who was on the committee and who voted on it?
Again, the committee was made of 2 members of...
But then what you should have done was at least let us know that you didn't ask, you asked them to vote without our knowledge. I didn't know. That makes no difference. You should allow that.
The purpose and why we took that step is because I spent time working with the council to town board, discussing with him the fact that we now have this inventory. We went through a conversation about detailed lists, broken down by district, broken down by map, because our intent was to say, now that we've identified these resources, we must look at a disposition plan. So we went through an entire planning process pursuant to the RFP that was coordinated.
Yes, Ms. Sinclair, from what our staff has told us with regard to this matter, is that they did not vote for this particular firm, and that there was no recording of the vote. Would you have a ballot of some kind of...
Mr. Regina, do you deny that you were involved in this process?
Did he vote on it? That's what I want to know.
RFP process, which
I was told that, here's what I was told. I was told that the supervisor staff put this item on the agenda unilaterally, not in consultation with anybody from the member.
Not only did we follow the required RFP procurement process and bipartisan committee, and did we go through a scoring process, we also had it vetted by your compliance officer. There's no step of the process that was kept secretive or closed to anyone. And when we ask for members of these procurement committees, it goes through your chief of staff to the town board, and we say, who are the people from these council-united districts that should be on these procurement committees? So there's no point where we're operating in a vacuum. This was completely coordinated.
Well, I just asked, excuse me a minute, I just asked, they did an evaluation, they did not vote. Because my staff does not vote on anything that pertains to my district without consulting me.
But again, we don't vote in procurement.
But you just said a few minutes ago that you voted on it.
I misused the word vote then. We have a procurement committee that goes through a vetting process that requires scoring on certain components. Every RFP that makes its way to this board should have gone through that same process.
So this item was scored. by members from Senior Councilwoman Goosby's staff, by members from the town board majority. It was with Mr. Regina involved, with the chief of staff to the Republican majority involved. They were all involved in this process and they submitted scores. Is that correct?
Scores are different from voting.
But nobody votes on an RFP. We are not a board.
You're a joke.
Because she said that, thank you. But she stated the people there voted on it. They did not vote. She cannot vote to sell land that I know my residents.
We're not selling land, Senior Councilwoman Goosby.
I think, here's the issue, okay? And there may have been a process that you went through, but from a value judgment that we have to make on the town board, this is a pretty big issue. Are we going to give an exclusive to one company? And I'm not sure that everybody understood that on the committee, but are we going to give an exclusive brokerage agreement that Mr. Haber says is worth $4 billion to one entity? I've been on the board of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey that owns much more property and much more valuable property than here. We would never give an exclusive to any one brokerage company because you want the brokerage companies to compete with each other on it. That's where we have an issue on this, and that's what we wanted for clarity on it, and that's why we're asking to table it. We're not voting against it, we're not making value judgments yet, but I don't know why we're making such a big deal about the fact that we'd like a little more time to look at this before we give an exclusive to a brokerage company that's going to get, in Mr. Haber's evaluation, a $4 billion commission agreement. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Well, first of all, you're not selling every piece of property you have. You're not selling Town Hall, which is worth $700 million. And in every single RFP you procure, it gives an exclusive to that vendor, whether it's to pave a road or do any particular property or project, whatever you're talking about. This is a broker who will then come to the board, property by property, which you will vote on, for a commission that's below market standards to dispose of. You're not giving an exclusive in any way that's
I would like to take a little closer look at it. I think that's fair and reasonable, and I don't know where we're making such a big deal about it.
Because it's been a months and months of a process that's been painfully making sure that it's bipartisan and everybody's involved, and you're just blocking it for no particular reason when you have these assets.
The town board didn't put this on the agenda. The supervisor's office put this on the agenda, correct?
I have to believe so, yes.
I'll say I did put it on the agenda after it was scored and exhausted months of bipartisan review. Mr. Regina, were you confused during the process? Were you very confused about this?
No, I wasn't confused about it.
Thank you.
You know, I think there's a difference between the scoring process and the fact that we have to make a value judgment on whether or not we're going to give an exclusive brokerage agreement to one firm to potentially dispose of all our properties. That I have an issue with, because I don't know many organizations that are as large as us that would give an exclusive like that.
Every organization I've ever been involved with, in public or private, would have one person representing them, otherwise it would be chaotic. It would be a free-for-all every time you had to sell a property. I categorically disagree with
you. You and I have different experiences, and I think I've been probably on the same level as you have, if not a higher level when it comes to real estate.
I unfortunately respectfully disagree.
Mr. Haber also, or Ms. Sinclair, I don't know who better, this is not just to broker out properties, it's to come up with a comprehensive plan of what properties we think are good to sell because they're not generating revenue and they should be generating revenue. Excuse me, Councilman, you can speak after I'm done. They should be generating revenue for the town, and properties that we could maybe use for nonprofit or use for affordable housing or use for something beneficial. And by hiring this company, we're not deciding that that's what we're going to do to address the senior councilwoman's concern. We're not deciding by awarding this contract to come up with a comprehensive disposition plan. We're not saying we're going to sell anything. That would come before the town board again. Isn't that correct?
That is 100% correct. And just my final point being that most municipalities on Long Island, including Nassau County, have an exclusive broker after an RFP process, so I'm not quite sure where you're getting information from.
Well, I can just tell you that I know that that is completely untrue.
Mr. Holland, did you not come to my office and tell me about properties that you thought should be sold in Roosevelt?
I came to your office to discuss properties in Roosevelt that were available to hopefully help create situations where we can maximize the ability for people to have affordable workforce housing for your community.
And what did I tell you? I know what they are. I have had a meeting with the residents in Roosevelt because of that piece of property. They wanted to put 14 houses. No one wants to live, so they don't even have a yard. nothing in the backyard. It's not gonna happen because they don't want it. And I don't blame them because everything has been taken away from as it is. Where you live, I bet you one thing, you have enough property to have whatever you wanna have. People here like to have that too. So that's the end.
Councilwoman, I came to you after you delayed the meeting for 2 months and brought up one particular property that you didn't want, but that's fine. But there's 750 other ones we could talk about. And my only goal is to do what's best for the community and make it the most value.
Now, can I just weigh in on this for 1 second? We had, when I came in 2 years ago, came 2.5 years ago, but I know over 2 years ago, the former administration had the Parks Department look at every strip of property that they had, and a lot of the property, 750 properties, are like little strips that they have to mow. They have to mow it, it's town property, the community would be upset if they didn't. So these little pieces of property, you're not gonna sell. And if they are gonna sell them, why are we spending taxpayers' money to go out and do all of this stuff when we have people that work for the town of Hempstead that could be putting this comprehensive plan together? We have a lot of great minds right here working for the CSEA that put this comprehensive plan together for us. And we don't have to go out and spend taxpayers' money again, you know, in a month before election trying to give away contracts. We're not going to let this happen. I don't want to see what our taxpayers don't have to spend money on and what we can have our CSEA workers do. I don't want to see it go outside the town of Hempstead.
I respectfully disagree. We have income, that property that could be generating revenue for the town that is not being utilized. These sliver lots could be sold at a nominal cost to the adjacent property owners, taking it off the town's burden. We wouldn't have to mow them anymore, and it would add to our tax revenue. So just for a moment, also items number 40 is a resolution that relates to asset recovery, and number 42 is a contract with Siemens to generate energy savings costs. These items would save taxpayers millions of dollars, would they not, Mr. Haber?
The Siemens project, which is item number 42,
Excuse me, Supervisor, point of order. I don't believe a motion to adjourn is debatable. Can we get a ruling on that and move on?
Mr. Haber, would they generate millions of dollars worth of savings for taxpayers? Can you answer the question, Mr. Haber?
Can we have a ruling for the...
I'm sorry.
Attorney?
Can you just answer the question, Mr. Haber?
Yes, the savings in energy efficiency from updating facilities at no cost to the taxpayers would have saved over $11 million over 20 years in energy savings and a positive cash flow of almost $6 million. By doing nothing, there's no work on behalf of the town. It's all guaranteed by Siemens.
Is this the LED work?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So since we're going to violate Robert's Rules of Order, Mr. Haber, I am told by people in the town of Hempstead that our town workers can do most of this work and that we don't have to sub it out to a private contractor so that we keep our people working so that they have the work that's necessary to keep the town moving forward in the right direction, energy efficient, saving the town money, that we should use our town workers rather than private contractors when we can. That's what I'm told, that this is just a question of changing fixtures.
Well, can I give you this?
Am I right or wrong?
You're wrong. Because not only is it changing 5,463 LED fixtures that haven't been changed for the last God knows how many years, it's 16 high-efficiency pool pump motors. It's a 75 kilowatt cogeneration system at Echo Park. It's 19 high-efficiency transformers at 8 sites. And it's computer management for every computer in the town. The town just doesn't have the bandwidth that's capable of doing these things. Well, yes, light bulbs are one thing, but this is the lowest hanging fruit out there possible.
Why don't we go back to the drawing board? Again, we're just asking to table this. I don't know why we're debating it. Why don't we go back to the drawing board and see, Mr. Haber, what can be done by our town workers that does not have to be done by private contractors, and what should be done by private contractors. Isn't that fair?
No, and I'll tell you why. The reason why it's not, because this has been going on for a year and a half. You spend tens of thousands of dollars for outside counsel to make sure this was done properly in a bipartisan manner. Your commissioners knew what was going on, and at the 11th hour you pulled this, and over that year and a half you would have had almost $200,000 in savings in positive cash flow already. The time, every day you wait is wasted money. Time is money. And you may not think that global warming is real or not, but every day you wait and changing these light bulbs, it throws off more carbon. I mean, there's a sense of urgency, a lack of sense of urgency in just about all these things we're talking about right now that I find flabbergasting. It's something we've all been working on together, and the man hours wasted by delaying this is ludicrous.
And finally, item number 43 are contracts relating to the establishment of a 311 response center. This is something that this board approved in their capital plan. It's no big secret that we're doing this. Once again, worked on for months in a bipartisan panel. Everybody knew about it, everybody was involved, but now they're just delaying it. And I think it's all for purely political reasons. So, now everybody in the public is aware of all the great good government transparency, saving taxpayer dollar items that this council is moving to adjourn. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Supervisor Gillen?
I vote no on the adjournment.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby?
I want to vote no.
Councilman Moscarella?
Aye.
On some of them. I had to take which ones are.
And we also have a second motion that's pending. Mr. Muscarella, can you just restate your motion with respect to item 53, I believe?
Absolutely. I move to amend item 53 to hold the public hearing on the proposed local law on November 12th, 2019.
Just so the members of the public are aware, this is the resolution to ban the intentional release of balloons. I believe our Department of Conservation of Waterways supported this. I'm not sure why we're delaying it. I don't think we can delay this item. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Well, first of all, since we're violating the rules of Robert's Rules of Order, I am going to tell you why I am going to join with Mr. Muscarella in his motion. Because I don't want a situation where kids are in a backyard having a birthday party and they release balloons and they're subject to criminal prosecution. I think we should find a better way to do this.
Well, the resolution says the intentional release of balloons, and really, the resolution...
Start questioning kids on whether or not they intentionally release the balloons or not?
I mean, honestly, do you really think that the intention of this resolution is to penalize kids and call them criminals? Really, it is intended to be preventative, because we found that our campers did a balloon release, and they were told the balloons were biodegradable, so they thought it was safe, it was okay, it wouldn't harm wildlife. After that balloon release happened at Camp Bangor, there was a lot of controversy. It became a teaching moment, certainly for me, that even though companies manufacture balloons as biodegradable, they are not always, in fact, biodegradable, or if they are biodegradable, it may take them 7 years to decompose. And in that time, it exposes wildlife to severe danger because they eat them, and then we see dolphins, fish, whales die from eating these materials. Also, they don't degrade, and they just sit on our beaches and pollute our beaches. So the intention of this legislation is really to be a teaching moment. We're hoping that people know that these balloons are not biodegradable, and you cannot have an intentional release of balloons like at an event, at a wedding, at a party, at something like that, that you will be penalized, but really the hope is that we won't need to enforce this, because once we spread the word, people will not do that. Because I think most of the people in our citizenry don't want to hurt wildlife, they don't want to pollute our beaches. They're buying these products because they think that they're doing something that's not going to harm our environment and harm our wildlife, and they are being deceived by the manufacturers.
I think there's a better way to do it than potentially holding people in the town of Hempstead liable, facing a penalty of 15 days in jail for releasing a balloon.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
No.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby?
Aye.
Councilman Moscarella?
Aye.
I think it should stay that way until we get it clean, so we know what we're doing. I don't want to see a kid held accountable, just like a kid, somebody locked her up. She's 6 years old because she had a tablet. I don't want to see that.
Are you talking about the incident in Florida? Yes. On the administrative calendar, I have a number of slips of people who would like to be heard. We have Felix Procacci.
Can I add an amendment onto one of the items? We have that item 44, that the town of Hempstead is doing for the IBA. They're allowed to lease vehicles that come from the state. We have to allow them to do it. If it was up to us, nobody would have cars, but it's not up to us. It's state law. So I would just like to amend it to say that the cars that they purchase should be American made.
Second, can I just mention, these are off a state contract, so I don't know.
So they should pick American cars off the state contract. I think that Councilman Dunn is right.
Exactly. Just so you know, they can, if the cars are not quote American made, they will have no cars beginning October 1st.
Commissioner Bakich? Hi. I believe that the cars that you've leased in the past were not American made. Do you have the ability to lease cars that are American made cars?
Because the decisions were made based on the energy efficiency.
Could you just speak into the mic, please?
George Bakich, Department of Planning. The cars in question are very energy efficient, and the lease prices on them were the lowest on the state contract. So a decision was made.
Well, the question was on the American made. Can you choose American made cars?
Oh, you can get them off the contract, but their different models are much more expensive. Well, these are $299, they're up in the $400 range. $425.
How many cars do
I don't have them here, it's 5 cars.
It's 5 cars.
Okay, so let's try to buy American.
Well, we're not buying these cars.
Yes, it's the same.
So,
Right.
so
Someone's got to pay.
are we going to have to vote on my amendment? Second, I didn't know we have to vote on. Thank you for your input.
The other issue that he may have is federal procurement rules, because these are the money that they use to use are from federal grants, and I'm not sure whether or not a motion of this type. I mean, if you say if possible, where if it's possible to do, I'm not sure he has that leeway.
Well, I can say that the government, it says to buy American also, so.
Can I interject? All right. Councilman Dunn, I would ask you to withdraw your amendment and that we just give the sense of the board to Mr. Bakich that he should be giving consideration to buying American cars, and if there is not a tremendous difference in price, buy American. Okay, Dennis? We just don't want to, we don't know what the law is.
You don't want to violate the law. I think everybody will agree we prefer that you buy American if you can, or lease American if you can, but we don't want to run afoul of any of this state or federal law.
The sense of the board.
All right. Mr. Procacci.
I object to all your adjournments. I think it's ridiculous. On item number 41, that was an adjourned, right? As far as the town board, has to give hand up 60 minutes prior to the commencement of the meeting. First of all, that violates, and we have been violating Robert's Rules of Order, and we've been violating our own procedure that we wrote here at our convenience. I get constantly interrupted without getting, without first person getting permission from the presiding officer, which is in the rule, which is in the Robert Rules of Order, but we don't mind doing that one. But this is violating state law because, and we've been doing this constantly, and the reason why the resolutions are aligned, the details, is because of me. Back when it became law in 2012, nobody wanted to do it, but I kept on bringing it up for 2 months, and then the board reluctantly agreed to do that. The resolution is supposed to be on the website a reasonable time prior to the meeting. So, for example, when you were going to fire Commissioner Pritchett, you knew you were going to fire him for a long time. I don't think you decided that morning that you were going to fire him.
I would say I did not know until like 30
No,
minutes
no,
before.
you were the exception. The thing is, a reasonable time, meaning you knew, so it should have been on the resolutions Thursday, Friday, when you put them up. You don't just come in 15 minutes or an hour before, even 2 hours before, because residents who look at these resolutions may want to speak on that issue. And unless there's an urgent nature, like the state law is going to change, or we have to be in compliance with some federal regulation and there's no board meeting in between and we have to do that, then that's an exception where, yes, we understand that it would have to be there 60 minutes before. But this violates on its face, because it doesn't give any conditions, New York State open meetings law. And the thing is, the biggest problem with this is, and I wrote it down, I copied it off the website, because the enforcement is the problem, that I have to file an Article 78 against you guys, which costs, as a minimum, for all the expenses, $425 plus my time, and then I have to get some dopey judge who doesn't know the law, or doesn't want to prosecute, who wants to ignore it. Or I can go to the ethics board, and they do the same thing. So this one has to be modified. We shouldn't vote on this one. If we're going to adjourn anyone, we should adjourn this one, because we have to rewrite it so it's legal. Because right now it's illegal. So now let's follow Robert Rules of Order and adjourn this one.
Mr. Bercacci, so this is supposed to address emergency resolutions. We have had a problem where items are handed up as emergency resolutions, and I agree with you, emergency resolutions should be emergencies. But we have seen emergency resolutions being handed up, they're called emergencies, like let's fire the sanitation commissioner today, although, I don't know how that would happen between 9 a.m. and 10 or 10:30 a.m. And it'd be an emergency, but then we do a vote on whether or not it's an emergency, and if I don't think it's an emergency, I vote no, but I can be overruled. But this is supposed to address emergency hand-ups. We've seen things that aren't emergencies be called emergencies, and we've seen emergency resolutions just being dropped in front of me at the board meeting. And nobody out there has an opportunity to even look at what the emergency hand-up is. So this is at least trying to take some ameliorative action to make sure that at least the people who sit up here and are supposed to vote on something have an adequate amount of time to at least read it before they come up here and are expected to vote on it, and that we can make some photocopies and put them out with the agendas so that you and other people in the public can actually read the hand-up before it goes before the town board.
Supervisor, I'm talking, Felix. Supervisor, basically, I can't predict the vote with absolute certainty, but I think this will probably pass based on my conversations with my colleagues, because we've had the same problem with you. So now we said, all right, let's make it fair. Both sides have to give 60 minutes minimum notice to the other side of a hand-up resolution, because your office has dumped them on us as well. So it's not one-sided, it's been both sides, and if we do vote on this, it's because we want an even playing field where both sides have adequate notice with regard to emergency resolutions.
I don't recall a time that I've done something in front of you at a town board meeting, but it may have happened.
It has happened.
When?
Many times in the past we come here, you've given us emergency resolution handouts?
I think they're always circulated beforehand, but I could be wrong. I'll have to go back and check.
You have done some in the back room and sent them in.
I certainly didn't hand up 73 amendments to a budget with no opportunity for you to review them.
That is our prerogative, and that is the process that's dictated by both town law and state law.
It's bad government.
No, it's not dictated by state law. State law says you have to put it on the website prior to this. And just one more thing, this law will do nothing. You know why? Because if the board doesn't vote on it, if the majority wants to overrule this anytime they want to overrule it, they will do so, and there is no stated punishment, and we have to spend $425 and go to court. That's it. So this law is absolutely useless.
Mary Ellen Craig?
Ariel Cray, 436 Locust Avenue, Uniondale. I was in favor of number 17, but there's no sense in mentioning that. On number 27, these site plans, is there an opportunity for us to see what kind of site plans they are for the Beechwood property in East Meadow?
Commissioner Rockham, would you be able to share a copy of the plans with Ms. Craig? She would like to take a look at them.
Is that where the former Jewish Center was located?
She wants the site plans.
Okay. I move they move straight in cabinet.
Second.
Madam Clerk. Oh, no, we'll vote later. Okay, good. Move. All right.
Were you trying to vote while she's there?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm waiting for an answer.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Rockham said that he would be happy to provide you with a copy of the site plan.
I see, but you'll vote before I have a chance to look at it. And then the same thing with the following one, the negative secret declaration. I'm wondering, what particularly is being done. Something is being demolished and something is being built.
She's talking about number 28.
Charles Lindbergh Boulevard at the Academy.
There's been a secret determination that there's no negative environmental impacts from this property, so we're just adopting that. But it's not approving the project itself.
So the project still has to come before you?
Commissioner, is this project number 28, has that already been approved, or?
I believe it's a matter of right, Supervisor.
Okay, it's as of right, says the Commissioner.
So that you're saying there is no impact as far as increasing actually almost 3 times the...
Generally with projects, Commissioner, maybe you can speak to this, there's always a secret determination if there is a positive impact or a negative impact for a bunch of our projects. So this one is saying it's a negative deck, that there is no impact. Can you just correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner?
This is just for the CEQA, but basically this is for the charter school that's there, and they're looking to put on an extension onto that school. But that's not part of this.
Correct. So then will that come before the board? Because that's tripling the square footage almost.
I believe it doesn't have to come before this board, it might have to go before the BZA. I haven't seen the complete plans yet, so I'm not sure.
So when does the public get a determination or an opportunity to view these?
After first of all, the CEQA has to be approved by the town board. After it gets approved by the town board, then the contractors will file the plans with us. Then we would review them to see if they need any further approvals from either the town board or from the zoning board of appeals.
Is there a plan to increase the height of the project, or is it just going outward, or don't you know?
I believe that they're trying to add a part for the middle school, and then for the high school, and I believe the high school one is going to be 3 stories, but I haven't seen the exact plans yet.
I see, thank you. I had a question on 37 and 38. Now you've decided not to discuss the 37, and yet 38 seems almost the same thing. The commissioner asked that we table 37 for the time being. You want to come back and remember this?
Commissioner,
how is that different from number 38?
it has to do with 2 different employees in different slots. That's why it's 2 different resolutions.
So what?
The new commissioner is moving personnel around and changing some of the things that he's doing there. So that's why there's 2 resolutions, and it's 2 different contracts for 2 different sets of employees. One said he's keeping, one said he's not.
Okay, so what is a one-stop operator service, please?
Commissioner Malone?
Ms. Stamp, oh, please, here, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it's here, I'm sorry.
Could you stop the clock, please? Well, there were at least 5 seconds at work.
Good evening, Supervisor and Board. Just to clarify, with 37, as Council has said, we did not get all of the information with respect to that particular item in time for it to be on the calendar tonight. So we respectfully ask that it be adjourned. With respect to 38, that is the one-stop operating system that is part of the town of Hempstead, Hempstead Works, where clients can come in, and with it being a one-stop operating system, everything they need, they can get it at door.
Now, are these for job opportunities or?
Training, job opportunities.
And it says Goodwill Industries.
Correct.
So they're the trainers?
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner, Semper Fi.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And another adjourned item is the 141, and I felt that that was a very reasonable and useful thing to approve.
41 is actually not adjourned.
Oh, really? Good. So I hope you'll vote for it. And I think the other one, 52, definitely very important. So I hope that you will improve that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Nita Meredith?
Okay, first, I hope my time is not allotted for items that I did not get a chance to review, particularly the add-ons, 59 and 60. I think it puts us at a disservice as residents if we're being told when we're sitting in the room that you have these emergency additions, and we don't have the opportunity to review that, to discuss that, particularly if we're talking about real property relief for veterans. So,
If you would just hold the time for a minute.
yeah,
So,
30 minutes, 30 seconds.
Mr. Rye, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for the real property tax relief for Cold War veterans, we're simply amending, there's a certain notice that needs to be provided. It was originally contemplated that it be provided with the tax bills. However, we're now going to provide it, we don't have the mechanism to distinguish in the tax bills who's a Cold War veteran, who's not. So now that notice will go out with the receipt, so we can give the proper notice that's required by law. But we can segregate which are the Cold War property veterans who need this notice from people who don't need the notice. Is that accurate, Mr. Roth?
Well, in most cases, if we're talking about the Cold War, those veterans are in their 80s. I mean, how else can we actually notify them, or in fact, maybe their widows, with regard to this relief? It doesn't seem like we do enough. I mean, aside from parades and pancake breakfasts, to really highlight.
This notification is going to be put in the bill. So they're going to get a copy of the bill and the notification to all. It's just notifying everybody that Cold War veterans. So if you don't know you're a Cold War veteran, and you see that and say, oh, that's me. Oh, I can apply for this. All right. We can't do a separate mailing on it. We're not going to do, we can't do certain mailings that we're prohibited to do. But putting it on the bill, it answers the call to everybody and anybody.
Just to clarify, we're actually sent with the receipt. Yeah, this legislation already passed originally, but again, it contemplated that the notice would go with the tax bill, but now we're just changing it so that the notice will go out with the receipt.
We passed it in April, we're very happy that we did that.
Yeah, I understand that, but again, when we're dealing with the fact that we still have many of our, for the most part, Cold War, Korean War veterans who don't know, that they are entitled to benefits from the American Reconciliation Act of 2008. I think we can do a little bit more with regard to getting the notification.
Always can't do enough for all that.
Well, yeah, we could do, we're not doing enough for our veterans. That's really part of the problem.
And Ms. Meredith, again, could you just stop the clock? Just the other emergency hand up was authorizing the town attorney to commence litigation. I don't want to go too far into it, but we have a problem with one of our contracts and we need to start litigation.
Between the county of Hempstead and the county of Nassau stays in a race with regard to litigation. So I didn't even want to waste my time or energy with that one. There's just enough with that. My ongoing issue with regard to contracts as it pertains to, I believe, items 29, 30, 31, 32, we're talking about diversity, and someone had to remind me that we're going into an election season because all of this fervor about contracts and jobs and creating opportunities for employees. I didn't really remember hearing this at any of the previous meetings, but a number of other types of contracts or opportunities were put out here that money gets outsourced out. I guess it all depends on who you're connected to, because I still do not see where we are actually contracting to anybody different, possibly a veteran-owned business, a minority-owned business, or a woman business. So I guess unless you are a friend or relative, you really don't get an opportunity to do any work here because it's not notified here, and no one seems to be speaking to that issue, particularly if we're talking about following the law. And as you were saying earlier, yes, you have to do least responsible bidder when you're dealing with federal contracts, and the fact that we're talking about how we're not exercising Robert's Rules of Order, as Village Berkacci said earlier, you haven't done it. You've never done it. So we can't act like all of a sudden we want to follow it now when we haven't been following it before. It would be nice to give it a try, but I guess once again it has to come out in some kind of Newsday or News 12 expose that this township is still not exercising any full outreach and significant aspect as it pertains to inclusion of diverse businesses within the contracts and the bodies. Lastly, with regard to the item 17, the fact that you had, again, a hard-working department within the clerk's office, and she's basically, I said that the time I asked with regard to paperwork that was not here.
But we stopped your time, Ms. Meredith.
No, it was already, the 30 seconds already allocated, and I just need 10 seconds so I can finish. Thank you very much. As I said, the town clerk's office, you have the clerk here, and her staff is also very hardworking. The fact that she presented her case quite sufficiently, that she's not able to get the equipment and the resources that she needs, again, is a disservice to those of us who have to sit here for hours to see this circus before me. You're very welcome. Thank you.
Marcia Darius. Brian Wiener. Karen Johnson. Can you just speak into the mic so we can hear you guys?
Thank you to Supervisor Gillen, the Town Council, and their staff. My name is Karen Johnson, and I'm with All Our Energy. We're a local organization that works to educate our communities on environmental issues and to encourage people to take action to protect our environment. You're probably well aware of the state of our waterways, especially if you've been to a beach cleanup or you've been out on the bays with Operation Splash. But it's worth repeating some facts. A lot of the plastics in our environment are in the form of tiny pieces called microplastics. We can't easily see them. So our beaches can seem clean and the water can look clear at first glance, but make no mistake, the plastics are there. Plastics are on every beach, in every ocean, and virtually every waterway in the world. including here on the land. The latest reports show that not only are these toxic plastics in our waters and in the fish we eat, but they're in us. Balloons are part of this problem. When they're released into the sky, they return to the earth, and regardless of where they land, they can be eaten by wildlife or entangle animals with their strings and wreak havoc on their bodies. If there's something we can all agree on, it's that we don't want animals to suffer, and we don't want to ingest plastic. I'm here to ask the town council to take action, making the intentional release of any type of balloon illegal. Exceptions could obviously be made for balloons used in governmental or scientific research. The town of Hempstead has to be part of the solution to suffering marine life and to the future viability of our waters. Balloons are an important part of that. The town council could actually go further. In addition to addressing balloon releases, it could do 3 more things. Eliminate single-use plastics in its municipal building cafeterias. Eliminate single-use plastics in future contracts with concessionaires. And pledge to drink our clean, local tap water out of reusable containers instead of paying for bottled water at all town council meetings. All our energy will be here to help you educate the community and to support any efforts you make on behalf of our environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. So that item was adjourned to November 12th, is that right? 12th. So that's when the public hearing will be heard again on this item. So if you can come back, otherwise the board has heard your comments. Thank you. Okay, the next 3 slips that I have are all on the balloon legislation, which has been adjourned to November 12th. So unless you're going to be, you all have an opportunity to be heard on that legislation then, unless you want to speak on anything else on the administrative item, I ask you to please come back for that public hearing on November 12th. And I have Marcia Bard. Is there anything else that you'd like to be heard on besides balloons? Okay.
Oh, no?
Are you just not here for the balloon?
Yes.
Okay, so that has now been adjourned, so we're going to have a public hearing on that now on November 12th. Okay? Shelley Goldman, did you want to be heard on anything besides the balloons?
Well, I guess I can wait.
Okay. And Randall Sorcher, did you want to just be heard on the balloons?
Yes.
Okay.
I will speak on the 12th.
Okay, and if you're unable to come back on the 12th, you could wait till public comment, and I'll call you first if you want to be heard then, because you waited to hear this and you didn't know it was going to be adjourned. Okay? All right, thank you. I do not have any other slips on the administrative calendar. Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on the administrative calendar?
Yes, please.
Yes, Pearl Jacobs, Uniondale. I just wanted to just make a comment, item 17. I cannot fathom how this board would impede efficiencies for the clerk's office.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to say that for public comment because it has been adjourned, so.
Okay, I just want to make that statement because it just blows my mind. Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to be heard on the administrative calendar?
I'd just like to speak on the balloons. Can I do that now?
The balloons you can do in public comment.
Can I make a comment about postponing the hearing?
You can comment in public comment, because right now we're just opening up the floor for the administrative calendar. Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on the administrative calendar?
52?
Yes, yes, you can be heard on that. 52 has not been adjourned. We're called out.
Lisa Cohut, CSEA Local 80.
I'd like that tabled because I would like to look at that further. I think that's a little intrusive on my members. You want to find out somebody's relative. I think that you should do that prior to them being hired. So as far as I'm concerned, if you find out somebody's a relative or in a relationship, you're going to target them, I don't find that acceptable. So I want that tabled so I can further look at that. I'm asking the board for your cooperation. Thank you.
Would you be upset if we voted against it? Because we also I think some of us feel it's very intrusive.
Well, I want you to vote against it. I don't want that at all.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on the administrative calendar? Okay. Clerk, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on the administrative calendar?
Supervisor Gillen?
So on the administrative calendar, I vote yes on all things. I believe that the item that was just spoken of with the disclosure of relatives is absolutely necessary for us to enforce our code of ethics, which mandates that people cannot supervise their relatives. It's difficult for us to enforce that because we don't know who's related to each other. Sometimes relatives don't have the same last names. I received an anonymous letter letting me know all these people, commissioners, supervising their son-in-law, other people who are married supervising each other. They don't have the same last name. There's no way that we can know that this board unanimously passed the ethics resolution. And it's not to, it doesn't matter if people are related, it's just they shouldn't be supervising each other. So it's not really an intrusion of their privacy, it's just to know who's supervising who, and whether or not they're related, so we can enforce our ethics code. Because right now, our ethics board, nobody has a means of knowing who's related to who. I also vote no for item number 47 on the personnel calendar with respect to Anthony Musante. And with respect to item number 35, I recuse myself because EAC was my client in my prior law practice.
Madam Clerk, before you continue the roll, just a question with regards to personnel. I don't know if Mr. Salmon is here, could answer. The name that the supervisor mentioned, Mr. Musanti, was that a Tosner list?
Yes, sir.
So is there any way that we can include it in that motion, take the next person off the Tosner list so someone doesn't have to wait as long as it clears through the investigation of human resources? Is that okay with everybody?
I think that if it's possible to include another name on the Tosner list, that we should do it.
Can we do it without having the name before us? We have to do it at the next board meeting, I believe.
We can't approve the employment of an individual without civil service approval. The next individual that will go to in the next round has to give us an application that has to be reviewed by civil service and approved before this board can take action.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't know if we could do it pending civil service approval.
No.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay.
And thank you for bringing that up, Councilman Diaz-Bazito, because I do want to say I'm very happy that the people I tried to take off the Tosner list in the spring are finally being taken off the Tosner list. And I do apologize that they were skipped over to approve people ahead of them on the Tosner list in the past. That was something that I voted against, and apparently it was done with the consent of the union president. I don't think that was the right thing to do.
Councilman Blakeman?
I vote aye with respect to all items on the administrative calendar with the exception of item 52. I vote no.
Councilman Diaz-Bazito?
I vote aye.
And also on the personnel list of the individual that Mr. Musanti.
Councilman Diaz-Bazito?
Aye. No on 52 and no on 47 with only regards to Mr. Musanti.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye on All right, calendar, except for item 52, and the part of 47 that says Anthony Masante, I vote no, and no on 52. Thank you.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby.
I vote no on 52, and I vote no on Mr. what's his name? Asante.
And Councilman Mascarella.
I vote aye on all except no on number 47 in reference to Anthony Masante, and no on number 52.
Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Second. Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Councilman Mascarella.
Aye.
Okay, we will now move into the public session, and I will call the people who wanted to be heard on the balloon legislation first, since they waited and we didn't know it was adjourned. Randall Borscher.
Thank you, Supervisor and board members, for the opportunity to speak. I am also a volunteer of All Our Energy. I'm a lifelong resident of the town of Hempstead, and I am an avid kayaker in Jewel, the Great South Bay, which is one of the best things about living in the town of Hempstead, that we have access to that. I often put in at various town public launches, in Baldwin, in Freeport, in Merrick, and all along the South Shore. And it is a fact that there is a lot of plastic pollution in the bay. As a kayaker, I'm able to go in between a lot of the marsh islands that a pleasure boat cannot go through, fishing boats cannot go through. And it is, without exception, that I see items of plastic in the marsh islands, including balloons. So I think that the proposed legislation makes sense. And I hope that all the board members will, in good faith, look at the intention of the legislation, because it also needs to be followed with education as to the purpose of it, which is to prevent something from harming our wonderful marine environment and the animals that we share it with. Thank you very much.
Marcia Barch. Shelley Goldman.
Hi, I'm Shelley Goldman. I grew up in Belmore, and then was away for a while, came back to live in Merrick, where I live now. And since I've been back, I've really looked around and seen a beautiful place that we all live in, and have grown to appreciate it. I'm very close to the Meadowbrook and Jones Beach, and we have a wonderful place to live in, and I would hope that you would all work on this balloon legislation and have it so we can prove it on November, I guess it's November 12th. It's one step towards protecting our environment, and we've heard from other people in greater detail. So I also support this legislation.
Thank you. Sir, did you want to be here on the balloon legislation?
Hi, Town Board and Supervisor Craig, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this. My name is Jim Brown. I live in Island Park, and I'm the Conservation Co-Chair for the South Shore Audubon Society. We represent approximately 1,300 families on Long Island. And we support this resolution, this bill. And I came tonight hoping to give some support to the people that would be speaking. And I definitely decided to speak myself after seeing that that the hearing was postponed, which I think is unfortunate. I think the recent stories about what happened at Cap Anchor really got people thinking about this issue. And I think that Newsday photographer should get a local Pulitzer so they can photograph and put on the paper. Long Beach has passed a law outlawing the purposeful release of balloons. Suffolk has passed a law, and East Hampton have other areas around the country. I learned tonight that the Office of Conservation Waterways is actually not in favor of this rule, which I think is wonderful. That department of the town is one of the best departments, environmental departments in the area, probably in the state. And I would hope that in passing this, I hope you will, that you'll listen to this department who do such great work at Oceanside and Lido. And these balloons and a lot of plastics give strong negative impacts on wildlife, birds, many endangered species, turtles, whales, piping plovers. Plastic is harmful for all of them. And to see release of balloons so close to the water is horrendous. And people, release them without thinking. They don't know the issues. I think now in this area, people are really beginning to talk about it. I know years ago, my wife worked at a nursing home in Long Beach, and they had parties, and they didn't release balloons, but after every party, after several hours, we'd have to go around, breaking these balloons to make sure, because you were right there by Reynolds Channel, you were right by the ocean, and so it's really high time that Hempstead passed such a law, to protect our waterways, protect our wildlife, and to really do the right thing. So the South Shore Waterfront Society highly recommends, along with All Our Energy and a number of other groups and your own conservation department, to really pass this rule. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Felix Bocacci.
Felix Bocacci. First, as far as typewriters and forms, you don't need it. I've put data in forms over 20 years ago with a lot less powerful machines than we are today. You just don't know what you're doing if you think you can't do that. The Woodmere Club adjournment, you cater to the people who came here that time, and you let them speak on the adjournment, and today was an exception. You didn't let people speak on the adjournment. It's politics pure and simple. On the Franklin Square Park District administrative charges, as well as all the other Park District administrative charges, I was able to get through Adriel Smith the employees, and I'm not saying putting their names on it, but the titles of the employees who work at my Park District, just like we do with all the other departments, Administrator 1, lawn, groundskeeper, whatever. You list them. Each of the individual park districts are charged with tax for that. 90% of it should not be administrative charge. You should detail out how it's spent with the next budget hearing. The enforcement of the compliance officer's law, you need to include punishment for every aspect. If anyone violates any part of that law, there should be a stated punishment, not just if you lie to the compliance officer or if someone interferes with his duties. Just like there needs to be a stated punishment for the enforcement of the town meeting law, it shouldn't be everybody having to go to court to do that and spend $425. Like I've said before, if you had to spend $425 before you could yell at your kids, you would never yell at your kids, because it would be too much trouble. You had to go to court before you could yell at your kids. If they do something wrong, there should be a punishment. You have to prove it, that's it. And then the ridiculousness of that $50,000 amendment to that, extending the contract cost and everything, and the example of running out of salt. For those who've been here a few years, if you look on page 52 of this year's budget, there's a contingency department. We have $300,000. It's written into state law that you're allowed to even put more money into contingency. So this town will never run out of salt between meetings. And if they did, at the next meeting, they could add more money to that contingency budget. You don't need to add that as a separate line item within that law. That was ridiculous. And finally, Nassau County audit of the town's animal shelter gave a list of the complaints about the animal shelter. That wasn't privileged information. They provided it as part of the audit. It was the dates and general descriptions. When I foiled the complaints to the town about the animal shelter, I got the answer from Joe Rock that it's privileged information. I couldn't even get the dates of the investigations, and that's a lie. Once again, it's another court case if I wanted to challenge it.
Thank you, Mr. Procacci. Mr. Rod, did we take the position that the animal shelter audit was privileged?
No. The complaints against the animal shelter, I wanted all the investigations, the titles and the dates. That was privileged. I didn't want even the investigation part, just the titles and the dates of the investigations that the town conducted. It's all secret. We don't even know if anything got done.
Okay, I'll look into that, Mr. Procacci. Rory Gordon?
Rory Gordon, Hop Hog, New York. On the agenda tonight, we were supposed to have the vaping situation. The agenda came out on the 20th, which was Friday. I called the town because several people called me today and said it wasn't going to be on tonight. If you knew about this, why wasn't it on the town website?
Because it has to be voted on whether or not it's going to be adjourned. So until there's a vote, you don't know if it's going to be adjourned.
But you put an announcement. I spoke, first of all, I called, and nobody could give me any answers. I spoke to Alicia in the supervisor's office, Erin, the secretary of the town board's office, Irene, the chief of staff, who referred me to Christopher, L-I-C-U-L-L-I, who he never called back. Finally, I spoke to Alex, who was the only person that I got a chance to speak to, and he told me that it is on the town website. But to find it, you'd have to be a genius.
You mean the proposed legislation?
No, the adjournment.
The adjournment wouldn't be a part of the agenda. What happens is if there's an item and it's going to be adjourned, there has to be a motion to adjourn the item, and then there has to be a vote. So for us to say it's going to be adjourned, we could be inaccurate because there has to be adjourned by motion, and if it was voted down, then it would be adjourned. So if someone told you this item was going to be adjourned before we voted on it, they would just be predicting. They wouldn't be certain that it was going to be adjourned because someone could say, yeah, I'm going to adjourn it, and then they could change their minds.
I don't have it in front of me, but it actually says on your website there was a press release that it's not going to be. Thank you. Town board to adjourn hearing on proposal of sale of vaping e-liquids.
I think Councilman Dunn, at some point last week, made an announcement that his plan was to propose to the board that they were going to be adjourning the hearing. Like the supervisor mentioned, you can't adjourn something until we all vote. Councilman Dunn had reached out to the caucus, and we agreed that in light of the proposal that the governor had put forth, that we agreed with him. But like the supervisor mentioned, we could have all came here tonight and decided to change our mind, and Councilman's done proposals, we could have moved forward with it.
But my point is why couldn't you put it in the agenda, because you already knew on the 16th.
We didn't know. Rory, we didn't know. You can't know that something's going to be adjourned until there's a vote.
Just in the event that the governor's law, that we had it in our hands, and we said, oh my God, that's not what we expected. Our law is going forward. We had to wait.
So why did you put this up there for the 16th? Why did
It has to be voted on.
I understand, but everybody reads the agenda. A lot of people were coming here tonight, and at least they would have known in advance. They didn't find out till today. I mean,
we still haven't got it, so it worked out. I called many, many people that were going to come, and said, listen, we're pulling it because the governor apparently is doing exactly what we asked in our law. And I thank you for volunteering to come down, but we really don't need you. But thank you, though. And that's what we did. And then we couldn't reach everybody, but so in the event that, you know, we don't need really, I think we pretty much answered.
Well, there's 35 people out there tonight. They didn't come in because I talked to them outside and said,
You talked to 35 people tonight, told them to go home, that were here to talk about maybe.
yes,
Can I have their names and numbers? I'll call them next time.
and I will get them for you.
Thank you, thank you.
I absolutely will.
Thank you.
Okay. What happened to Mr. Novello? Like, where did he get placed?
He's reassigned, and we can't discuss personnel.
I heard he was fetching your coffee. And Roy Gunther, why isn't he in the building department?
Mr. Rod doesn't drink coffee.
Then it was his glass of wine. What happened to Roy Gunther? Why is he not in the building department?
Mr. Rod, I'm not sure if we can answer that question.
We're paying these guys $150 grand a year. Yeah, where's the resolution to transfer them?
He's been reassigned pending the outcome of these issues.
Where's the resolution to put him into another department? You have to do that. That's the law.
He hasn't, his duties have been changed. He still is a member of the building department, but he's not in this building.
Okay, then what's the excuse for Roy Gunther?
Excuse me?
What's Roy Gunther's excuse? He's not in the building department.
I think what Mr. Rogers said is he hasn't been transferred out of the building department. He's still in the building department. Is that accurate, Mr. Rod?
Yes.
What's the status of the red and yellow homes? How are you resolving the issue of killing these homes?
Ms. Sinclair, do you want to just address this?
So we've been working first and foremost with FEMA. There's been trouble getting to a data agreement with them because it's important that, and I think the distinction has been made by the Commissioner of Buildings himself, that the designation is just a visual assessment. It has no real data behind it that assigns values. It allows you to do substantial damage calculations, which is what the real issue is for homeowners. So I think we're at the point where we'll see, hopefully in one of the next board meetings, a resolution allowing us to enter into a data agreement with FEMA about claims history and repetitive loss properties, and we'll be able to take our list of red and yellow homes and run them against that data and determine what folks maybe weren't able to take advantage of the New York Rising program. And the folks that weren't, we're currently working on a round of pre-disaster mitigation funds to allow for a funding source for them to actually solve their problem.
How long do you think that's going to take?
Well, we need a resolution to receive the data, so within the next couple of board meetings, since we have that, we can do a cut of that information, working with the building department, within their own files and the information they have about who received permits and who did not. And then the pre-disaster mitigation funds, the applications are due in December, and we have a funding round in the next year.
So I think the relevant and most important thing, Ms. Gordon, is that after years, finally we're taking action to try to provide some relief to these homeowners. And I commend you, Ms. Sinclair, for leading the charge on this. Thank you so much on behalf of our residents.
Oh, and I appreciate it, but there's still 8,500, I believe. Is that the number that's like displaced right now? I mean, I don't know if they're in or out.
I'm really not sure what that number comes from. There were thousands of assessments done, but I think it's important again to highlight the fact that these were visual assessments that don't assign numbers to damage. So the real concern here is substantial damage, and that's why we've been digging into the data sets that are going to give clarification. The other thing that's happened since these visual inspections were done is that we've had changes to the assessment rules, which is part of the calculation. So there's two factors that will actually benefit homeowners who may have been determined and want to appeal out.
Thank you.
Aaron Ross.
You made it just in time, Bruce. How are you? Good evening. I do appreciate you taking this time. I do appreciate everything that you do in giving the constituents a chance to speak their concern.
Thank you. I'm sorry, could you just state your name and address for the record?
Okay, my name is Aaron Ross, and I am from Atlantic Beach. And I'm here to speak about raising the minimum purchasing age for all tobacco and nicotine products to 25. There is an initiative called Tobacco 25, which is being strongly considered in North Hempstead by Supervisor Judy Bosworth. And she has been a strong proponent of raising the minimum purchasing age in the past to 21. And now that the state has done it, she is considering going a step further to 25. I think that this is a very good piece of legislation. A 21-year-old college kid is still very, very young and may not have the wisdom or maturity to realize what they are putting into their bodies. You know, tobacco and nicotine is so addictive. I mean, they say that nicotine actually is one of the most addictive substances on earth. And more people have died as a result of tobacco and nicotine addiction than they have from opioids. Even though opioids may get a lot of media attention, people have actually suffered more as a result of tobacco and nicotine. That's, just look at the statistics. There needs to be more media attention about this. So I'm asking you guys if you can raise the minimum purchasing age to 25.
Thank you. It's something that we can just discuss and consider going forward.
I have spoken about this in the past with Bruce Blakeman. Do you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, I do. First of all, I believe it's the state that needs to take the action to raise it, so that would have to be a state initiative. I don't see as the town can do that unilaterally. But my opinion is that I don't think we should be concentrating so much on the age, and we should think more about an outright ban on tobacco products, because whether you're 25 or 35 or 40, it's created a public health crisis. And one of the best things I ever did in my life was quit smoking, because I've seen so many people that I know that did not quit, who have emphysema, heart disease, other types of lung disease, cancer, and things of that nature. So I think that we need to really take a look at this on a national level and make a determination as to whether or not we should even have tobacco products in the United States, and have a healthy debate on that, and let both sides be heard on it. And you know, I don't see any rational reason to be allowing to have something that is so deleterious to your health.
In fact, I would agree with you on that assessment. I believe that nicotine ought to be a banned substance outright. I mean, people talk about it like freedom of choice, and it may be so for the first 5 cigarettes, but after as little as 5 cigarettes, someone already starts to develop an addiction. And it's really a horrible exploitive scheme, because big tobacco doesn't care about the well-being of young people. They don't care about the health, safety, the well-being of young people at all. The only thing they care about is making a profit. And if you look at the vast majority of people who smoke, the vast majority begin when they're under the age of 25. And I just want to say one more thing, that in the town of Hempstead, there's 800,000 people. 1 in 8 of them smoke, which means that there's 100,000 people just in the town of North Hempstead who smoke. The vast majority of them began when they were under the age of 25. And so by raising the minimum purchasing age, you will be solving a lot of problems and saving thousands and thousands of lives. Not anywhere else, But just right here in the town of North Hempstead, you'll be saving thousands of people.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Thank you for coming forward today.
And I hope you put this on the agenda for next time.
Thank you.
And by the way, the town can do it. You said that the town cannot do it, the town can do it.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. I'm sorry, I had it just
I will consult with our lawyers. Our lawyers have told us we cannot act unilaterally, but we'll look into it.
Okay, well, it's already been done in North Hempstead, so.
Mary Ellen Craig?
Thank you.
Mary Ellen Craig, Uniondale. In regard to bus stops, Uniondale Avenue has one lane in each direction, in some cases with parking along the lane, the side of the lane, but in other cases not. And we have a very severe problem at the southwest corner of Uniondale Avenue and Jerusalem Avenue. There is no parking lane there. The bus stop is at the corner. Is there a way to establish a pull-in code or bay or something like that for the bus to avoid completely stopping southbound traffic? It might require acquiring a part of the adjacent property, but it would significantly aid traffic flow on Uniondale Avenue. Because to exacerbate the situation, a red light camera is at that location. So stopping the traffic means a major stop for all the south traveling cars. If the bus is the first car or the first vehicle, nothing moves, and all these poor cars going southbound are stuck with a red light camera and they can't move for 2 lights.
Mr. Reed, if you would just step forward for a minute. I believe these are county roads. Would we have any jurisdiction over them?
But since you have a law about bus stops, I thought maybe there's a way to work in codes into the bus stop legislation. Because it's very awkward. Sometimes the buses stop right in the lane. I mean, in this case, they have no choice. Okay, there is no place for them to pull over.
Right.
But sometimes there is room and the bus will stop in the middle of the lane and there you are, nothing can pass unless they go into the oncoming traffic. So there should be some kind of way of requiring that the buses pull over sufficiently, and certainly when the roads are worked on, that the people can find a way to get through.
Well, those issues would have to be worked out between the town and the county, because the county maintains the traffic signal at that intersection, and parking issues would have to be looked at. And as Mrs. Cray said, that there could be property acquisition to maybe put a, what's called a bump out to move the bus over further up the road. Those are all issues that have to be worked with multiple jurisdictions to try to improve the intersection. I would have the advocate take a look at it and see what's established out there to begin with in terms of restrictions and things like that, to see if any signs are missing that would deter other vehicles from parking near where the bus is supposed to stop. And we'll see if we can maybe clean up anything in that area, and then also maybe reach out to the night spot service to work with them to see what we can do.
All right, thank you, Mr. Reed. Will you just coordinate with Ms. Cray so she knows you're going to come and take a look? Thank you so much, Mr. Reed.
On number 17, I think adjourning this item was purely a political decision to wait until the election, since no board members are up for election, but the town clerk is.
So actually, Ms. Cray, some town board members are up for re-election. Mr. Blakeman is up for re-election. Councilman Keith Sweeney was up for re-election. I think they just picked someone to replace her, but I'm not sure. And Councilman Muscarella is up for election too.
Oh, my bad. Thank you.
Yes, and supervisor, I'm up for re-election, and so is the town clerk. I think everybody knows I'm up for re-election. And town supervisor. I'm sorry, receiver of taxes is also up.
Yes. However, I do have another question. Do we have an idea when the CDBG contracts will be available and ready for signing?
Are there any contracts in particular, Mr. Bakage? Maybe you could speak to Mr. Bakage and he could clear things up for you. He's right back there.
Thank you, I thought he had left.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Craig. Regina Datner?
Everybody.
Good evening, Ms. Datner.
How was everybody's summer? Went by too fast.
They always go too fast, don't they?
I said to somebody yesterday, how was your summer? They said, what summer?
Although it feels like summer these past couple of days.
I'm not complaining, but we're going to get hit with the cold real soon, and you'll complain with that too. I'm here this evening. As you know, I'm a volunteer at the animal shelter for 5 years and plan on continuing with the love I have for the dogs. I am currently being discriminated and harassed by Melissa Fogarty, who is a supervisor there. She's got quite a few jobs there. I feel Melissa Fogarty is trying to push me out and trying in a way she can get my resignation. This happened last Thursday. We had meetings last week regarding a new level that we have for the dogs. We have green, blue, new one is orange now, yellow, and then of course the red dogs. I have been walking an orange dog since he's come back. I've had no issues with him at all. She took me off of him and wants to keep me at a little level. I disagreed with her about it. She shouted at me out the hall, you're quitting, you're gonna quit, right? You're quitting, why don't you quit? To me in the hall. While there's potential adopters walking in the hall too, coming from the cat room going in one, and from one going in the cat room. You had promised to fix all this drama, harassment, and discrimination that goes on at the shelter. The dogs are suffering because they're surrounded by all this. Ms. Gillen, what can you do to help me out so I can continue volunteering there and the dogs will not be suffering anymore? That's my biggest concern. We also had a meeting last week and we're told by Ms. Fonte and Ms. Fogarty that the dogs that are unfit in society or cannot be placed because of their issues are going to be put down because they have no place to put them. They asked us if we had any suggestions. You know, if you're doing your job, why are you asking the volunteers? I have about 1,000 suggestions that could help, but I would like to sit down with you on that myself if you do have the time. Not necessarily tonight, maybe tomorrow or another day. Because this has got to stop with what goes on there at the shelter and how I'm being treated. We just got a new volunteer handbook last week, and we were told in the handbook about discrimination against one another, and it's continuing with me.
Okay, Mr. Raw, would the proper protocol be for Ms. Datner to just file a complaint so we can investigate the matter?
We filed a complaint.
You have?
I'm aware of the incident, we're looking into it.
So it's being investigated? Okay. So Ms. Datner, it is being investigated, and I'd be happy to have you come in and discuss your suggestions.
Please tell me who I can talk to that's here tonight so we can set up a date.
Right now, you can speak to Mr. Lockaruba and you can set up a date with him.
Which man is this man?
Right there.
Okay. I see him here at the meetings. I never knew your name, sir. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Datner.
Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Diane Madden?
Diane Madden, Hempstead. Full disclosure, I'm running for Hempstead Town Supervisor. I've been troubled too, hearing from the staff and a lot of volunteers that kind of held it in during these meetings, and we're told that some of the dogs are going to be euthanized. And this was something that I discussed with Santino, and I predicted what was going to happen when they took a job meant for an expert, which was Laura Garber at the time, and they filled it with a political patronage favor who lied throughout the the hiring process. And in order to hide that, they contracted Kim Strong at the time, which I objected to as well. So they have no more places now to hide dogs. And now they're looking at all of these dogs that have become extremely aggressive. And that's due to the fact that they took a position that was valuable and they gave it out as a favor. And these animals are suffering, staff are getting injured, volunteers are getting injured, people are getting punished for speaking out. And I looked today at the animal shelter just kind of out of curiosity because just a few years back, there were many, many dogs available to families with 10-year-old children and under. Now there's none, 0. But you know who's available? Everybody over 17. So basically when you go to the Town Hempstead Animal Shelter, if you have children, you should be advised not to even come in to look at the dogs because you have to have basically children over 17 years old. And by the way, most of them are marked special adoption, trainer only. What happened to the RFP for trainer? Because this is the biggest crux of the problem aside from the mismanaging animal shelter director who remains in place.
With designation for ages, isn't that to protect children? That's why we have the designation that it's 17 and older, because there might be a bite history with the dog.
Based on the behavior history of the animal.
That's what I thought.
So out of 32 dogs, 27, none of them are getting better. That's the bottom line. None of them are increasing and getting better in behavior. They're worsening in behavior because you don't have proper training there. People are getting injured. Do you have an RFP up? Have you interviewed trainers?
What's the status of the RFP?
The RFP for trainers, we did not have any responses. The RFP for our operational assessment, we had put it back out because we only had one response. We're still with that one response. We're going to contact that vendor and bring him in for an interview.
Are we going to put the trainer RFP out again?
Trainer RFP, I have no problem putting it back out again. I reached out to all of the different universities and whatever suggestions I got from folks.
You had two great people that interviewed for that position that were never called.
Who was that?
Laura Garber was interviewed.
That was a prior RFP, not the one that just currently went out.
But she was interviewed, and she's highly qualified, and she pretty much blew everybody away, and I believe you too, Councilman Diaz-Pazito. And what about the veterinarian as well? Dr. Iovino.
We just had a meeting with Dr. Iovino last night, working with DGS to see if we could secure an agreement with her.
That is music to my ears, thank you. Could someone update me on the investigation regarding the August 13th incident with the dog Duke and the employee and the situation where the dog was, in my opinion, abused? What happened there? Is that investigation ongoing?
Investigations concluded, the employee has been disciplined.
Mr. Wildig, is he still in place? Any update about that situation?
That has been referred to the ethics board.
And how long will that take to resolve?
Well, I did send the referral over, and I did ask the ethics board to convene, but Mr. Ra has indicated they haven't convened yet. Mr. Ra, will you reach out and try to convene the ethics board? We also have the problem that there's a vacancy now because of the person resigning, I believe last week, before they ever sat. So we'll hopefully have another appointment by the town board majority at the next board meeting.
I'm not surprised that they resigned. I'm sure they probably are all considering that at this point. But can anyone tell me when they will pick another person, who will be picking that person, and how long that will take?
The designation that the person that vacated or resigned was someone appointed by the town board majority, so they would be the body that would be appointing a replacement.
So it won't be until at least the next town board meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Any chance of contacting Ms. Garber regarding the position as well, to get, so that people can come in and not take a look, you know, when they have 12-year-old children, that they can't have a dog because it's basically been penned up for 2 years, not getting what it needs.
Are you talking about for the trainer position?
Right. She did
Put
apply.
that out to RFP again.
I think we can reach out and have a discussion with the shore.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Pearl Jacobs?
Pearl Jacobs Union deal. So just to touch back on the item 17, you know, listen, this impeding efficiencies is a disservice to taxpayers and makes no prudent financial sense. And it's also a disservice to the clerk, disrespect, and to her staff, because she worked very hard to, you know, enhance efficiencies and would be better for the community, the town of Hempstead, the taxpayers. It makes all prudent sense to move forward with this, and that's all I have to say about that. So I have a question. Senior Councilman Gooseby. My question is, the residents of Uniondale are asking, what are the roadblocks that are impeding the completion of the Uniondale streetscaping project? No, I don't know. Can I finish my statement, please? I just want to tell you, share with you the consensus of the community. Yeah, but I want to make a statement because my members of my civic asked me to make this statement. It is the consensus of the community that residents that this project is being intentionally stalled for either political reasons and or the funds for the completion of this project has been reallocated.
Well, you can tell your people, he'll explain it to you.
Your people
give you a copy of it.
They're your people also.
George Bakich, Planning and Economic Development. The contract for that project should be on the next calendar. The money has not been reallocated. Once that is passed, the intermunicipal agreement with the county will be signed. It will have to go before the county legislature also, and then we'll get a start date on the project.
You know, you told me this before, Commissioner Backett. You told me this a few times before. Now this is the
fact of the matter is, we had to go out a second time on the bidding process because we only got one bid. The county did not want us to go forward without doing the rebid, which we just got back about 3 weeks ago.
Well, I was told by our county legislator that this would not be an issue
Maybe you should speak with him then.
Well, maybe you should speak with him. Maybe the town.
We are ready to go. The contract's
Why am I always
going
going between the town and the county?
You can call me tomorrow morning.
Okay, because like I said, this is the consensus of the residents. I'm just speaking what they're telling me and what they're voicing, that this is either political or the money has been reallocated.
It's not political. The contract is at town hall. It should be on the next calendar.
On October 2nd, $1.1 million will be allocated, be on the calendar.
And do you have any sort of estimated show on the ground date for phase 2?
I do not, but I know the money will be allocated, it'll be on the calendar, and we'll vote for it on October 2nd.
So we're probably looking at a start date of, again, until next year, maybe.
I can't tell you that. You know, that would be up to the engineer, and the money will be there, so he has to get whomever's going to do the work. So all of that. So I can't give you a date, but I can tell you the money is coming in.
You know, it's not a good look when, you know, you do a project and you do it half done, okay? And then
It was not, listen, you're working cooperative, you're a cooperative worker. You know you can't always get everything when you want it. And you also know it was not us. It was the county.
Well, it was a break.
The county did not have enough money. We had our money.
Well, you know what, it's still not getting done. The county has basically transferred this project to the town and it's still not getting done.
No, they didn't have the money. They didn't give us money for it.
Well, you said they did.
But now, I just told you on October 2nd, it will be on the calendar, $1.1 million that we finally got, we're finally getting, that they're bringing the money into us. We did not have that money.
The bulk of the job is actually going to be the county's.
So will I be able to get proactive updates regarding the progression of this project so that I can go back to our residents and
You can call me anytime. You have my number, I've given it to you. I have yours. Whatever you want to do, we'll make it.
Well, when you have your next meeting, I will come and tell them, whatever needs to be done, I will do it.
My next meeting is October 7th.
October 7th, let me see if I can come. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kroll?
Meet him, there it is.
Say it like that. I wish that was how many public offices we got? I'll try not to get tossed out.
Get what?
Try not to get tossed out.
I didn't cross you out.
Try not to get tossed out.
Oh, tossed out?
Tossed out.
Why are we gonna toss you out?
I don't know, we have that history, don't we, senior council?
I don't toss you out.
Really?
It's just when you run over time.
Oh, okay. Like I said, I hope I don't get tossed out.
I can't pick you up.
My questions, first of all, have to do with, I know the tabling and all that, but with regard to the vaping situation, I do believe it was this body that initially passed a number of those zoning requirements and variances that we have so many facilities that were there. And I mean, I probably was among those that were trying to challenge those applications when they came before this body. But once again, it was overruled because for some reason people don't seem to listen to the residents who live in the communities where we have so many of these establishments. So definitely I am all for anything to be removed that's going to be toxic to our residents. And as I said that at the time when it was overruled by the majority, and now we have these facilities that all of a sudden everybody's up in arms about removing. My question is, what is going to be done to replace those soon-to-be vacant buildings, which will be next to the already vacant businesses that we have in many of these communities? Because I, for one, living in Baldwin, since we already have 7 7-Elevens on our main drag, we are looking for a little more diversity, not just in contracts, but in actual service providers.
My concern with the 7-Elevens was I thought there was too many also. But every time we go to one, they're packed. So there must be a need for them because they stay in business and they're always packed. I don't know if it's because the lotto tickets are selling. I don't know what's the reason for the slurpees, but they're always packed. I don't know for the coffee. Anyway, I would like to close down all the vape stores. And you know what? I don't care if the store is empty. I want these kids to be safe. I don't want them in the hospital with the inner linings of their lungs being eaten away. No, close the damn store. I don't care if it's empty.
I'm not saying keeping it open, but I'm saying that, again, I was one of those that were here challenging this body before they opened it, and I believe there are a few of you who said, well, you know, they're going to make sure that our young kids are not getting involved in it, that they're not going to have access to it. I just find that whole pivot, that change of dynamic, it's a little disingenuous, but I'll keep it.
It's not disingenuous.
Okay.
If I could close them down, I would close them down.
Okay. But please don't give the developers those pilots in the lieu of taxes that you usually do that then becomes a tax burden on the middle class that are also moving out in droves. My other issue has to do with that MPC and living once again in a district where we do not have adequate representation. Did anyone think to ask the residents how they feel about possibly not having their voice or their representative? I understand the circumstances with regard to why Councilwoman King Sweeney had to leave. I understand that. But no one asked those of us she represents how we feel about not having a voice at this table. That's my concern with regard to that. It's all, again, about backroom deals and party room machinations that are impacting those of us who pay the taxes on a regular basis. I have a problem with that. Thirdly,
as you know, there has been, this board has done appointments to fill the vacancy until the election. And, you know, you complained about that. So now we're not doing it because there is an election coming up quite soon, within 6 weeks, I believe. And so at the end of the day, we don't, I guess.
Pretty much. The same with the rest of us.
Okay, thank you.
We're all in the same boat with regard to that. Okay, my last issue has to do with the fact that I was born and raised in Roosevelt, and I don't want to give any connotation because it seems that the media, due to the lack of representation of my community and those of us who are successful and from that community, we're not the only community that has town property that's been paid for as far as a parking lot or any other such thing. So let's just be clear about that. But I agree that we need to have some kind of tracking system to at least have an idea of what type of value we have with real estate. It's not saying that every piece of that property is going to be built up, but if we have a way that we can track that and determine what best use we can have for that, I think that we should at least give the supervisor and her staff the tools to do that, in addition to giving the clerk the equipment that she needs to do the job that she does and her staff does on a regular basis.
Okay, Ms. Meredith, I know what properties we have in Roosevelt, and the properties that they want to use to put things on, people can't move. They want to put about 14 houses, put together in an area that's not even 2 acres. Okay, that's what's going on over there, and the movie house and all those things are gone. They don't have anything like that. We don't even have space for a ball field for the children. So if we had it, that's what we would do, put a ball field there.
Well, we can put a ball field at Roosevelt Park.
Put it where?
We can upgrade the field area that we have involved with Roosevelt Park. Arthur Mackey Park, Park is.
Okay. Why don't you ask the county? They won't let us do it.
Okay, well, I'll definitely ask them. The same way I'm looking for brownfield money for North Baldwin, which is across the street from Coasting Park.
Okay.
And you well know I helped to get, with your help, with your assistance, we got funding to do the work in Coasting Park, and we appreciate that.
And I did it even before you started coming here.
That's fine. I was still going to the county, so it's always about collaboration.
All right.
And I'll leave before you have to have me moved out. Thank you.
Okay, next person is Jim Brown. Jim Brown spoke, okay. Yeah, Jim Brown. Okay, Teresa Raw.
Hi, my name is Teresa Rua, and I live in Seaford. And I've come to bring to your attention a troubling situation that's been caused by our state government. Because of the new New York State vaccination requirements, more than 4,000 Long Island children have been displaced from their current schools. Now, these parents are being forced to homeschool their kids. And my husband and I, we homeschool our kids, and it's hard enough when you choose to do it. But to be forced and to have no other option is kind of scary. Our homeschool group meets in Hempstead, and our group has tripled in the last few months because of these laws. And we're actually having to turn families away from having social environments for their children because of this new law. Now, the state is not doing anything to provide help with the educationally displaced children. So I'm wondering if there is anything that the town of Hempstead can do to provide something for these children. The budget includes funds for youth guidance and for senior enrichment, but can we provide resources in the budget for the growing homeschool community, maybe a recreation program or a drop-off tutoring program? Now, Councilman Dunn, you had said previously about the vaping situation that if the state government isn't going to do something, then the town government will. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to see what the town of Hempstead can do to provide resources for these children.
Let me address that. I'm sorry to hear about your predicament, but as you well know, approximately 66% of your tax bill is the school districts. And I don't think that we have the resources to get involved in things that should be funded through the schools. So I think that your advocacy would be better to go to your local school district and tell them that if a child is homeschooled, they should also be entitled to certain recreational avenues so that they have choices that they can make with respect to recreation. that may not directly involve the school, but can be handled by the school district.
Right, so the problem isn't with homeschooled students. We've chosen to homeschool our students, and the problem is with the vaccinations. We're not even allowed to go in and take the SATs at this point if the child is not vaccinated according to the requirements. And this coming year, the Gardasil vaccine will be also become mandatory, which has a very high death rate. Now, I vaccinated my children. I don't fall into this category. We're actually a homeschooling group that's trying to help these families, and we're having to turn them away, and they have no place to go or to run to for any educational support. The schools aren't doing anything because the kids aren't fully vaccinated according to their standards.
Well, I think that you should address that with the school districts, because maybe they can put together programs for unvaccinated kids so they get a recreational outlet too. So, you know, they're not spending the money educating the children, so at least they should provide some service to the homeschool kids.
You would think.
But I think you should do that through the school boards.
So nothing that the town of Hempstead.
We don't have the financial wherewithal to do it. Like I said, almost 2/3 of your tax bill already goes to the school districts for those purposes. I don't see how, you know, we could afford to get involved in programs like that. Well, I mean, we could take a look at it, but I'm giving you an honest answer.
Even using a town of Hempstead building for these students to, you know, do something in during the day, you know, would be
We don't have enough of those types of buildings. I really think that if you went to the school districts and you had enough people that would ask for recreational facilities to be used, and if they feel they have to segregate it to only unvaccinated children because of some health policy they have, well, so be it. They can do it. But they have the financial wherewithal, they have the buildings, they have the programs. We do not.
Well, they've taken the money, but they've kicked the children out. So the children are no longer.
Your state senator can go to the State Department of Education and demand that the money be put for all children. The state's responsible to educate all children. Now, if they dump the responsibility in your lap, well then, darn it, they better come up with some money to make it proper, make it, you know, feasible for you to do that. So I would go to my state senator and say, hey, what the heck are you doing for us?
That's what the state senator should do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Marcia Barrios?
Good evening, Marcia Barrios, 9 Forge Lane, Levittown, and I'm coming with a little story. Years ago, I got this really bright idea, and I shared it with my neighbors, and they said, yeah, that's a great idea, but it's never gonna happen. So I did. I never worked with government before. I didn't know where to go. It was something I did have to deal with government. And they said, well, you gotta get a petition. So I did my petition and made a presentation. It kind of hung around, I don't know where, for years and years. And then I met with Councilman Dunn. And I would say within a week, he had everything going. He set up a meeting with Commissioner Lino and his staff with me. And I don't want to talk about exactly what it is, because that's not the point. The point is that he did this. I don't know how he did it, but it's done. And on behalf of my neighbors, I just want to thank you. And you restored my faith in government, that's all I can say. So I have time. So I do want to talk about something else.
Thank you for your compliments.
You're the best. I'm so happy that you represent us. So I did send an email to each of you about okay, I gotta get my props out here. Within a week, I got 2 mailers in the mail. One of them is for invitations to nominate people for the Make a Difference Award, which is very nice. And then I got another one, I'm invited to Town of Hempstead Fiscal Executive Budget Presentations. So 2 mailers within a week. And one that I think you should be mailing is the shelter rabies Yes, because this used to go out when Supervisor Santino was here. It went out to every resident. This is the biggest event at the shelter. It really is. We had such great attendance. It's a service. I can't talk about it, so you could read that email that I sent out. This is something that our residents should know about. And since this has not been mailed out to everybody, the attendance has dwindled. We used to get like 400 people. We got lots of adoptions. Now look, there's a line around the block with people waiting to have their dogs and cats vaccinated. And also they do chipping. Chipping is great because it brings dogs and lost dogs and people together. So it's a service. It's a real service that the town is giving to the residents. And I really think they should be aware of it. A lot of people don't even know where the shelter is. This town is so huge. Oh, I got to say that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Barrios. That's something that we can consider mailing out next year. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. Dina Kovoros.
Good evening, my name is Dina Kovoros. I live in the town of Wantagh. I am here to additionally piggyback on the sentiment of Teresa Rua. I'm here representing the body of children, probably near 1,000, in the town of Hempstead that have been forced to be homeschooled and that are without services. I understand your point and I did listen to your comments. And unfortunately, the state education department, without legislative procedures, they released emergency guidelines from the state down to school districts at the final hour in late August, barring children from even attending any extracurricular events. Not only that, but children have been excluded from their services. Autistic children with IEPs and 504s have all been excluded from both getting their services and from any extracurricular events or things that are happening in the schools. So if there are any ways that any additional programs that can be extended around STEM or the arts or sports and fitness, we implore you to take some action and stand up for these families who are being persecuted for their religious freedoms. That's really all I have to say.
I'll join with you to send a letter to my state senator and requesting that take charge, do something. And maybe with the people from all over the town of Hempstead.
That would be much appreciated because most of our school districts are saying that they were advised by their councils to do nothing. And many of them are standing idly by while these children are excluded from everything.
All that's tax money that they're taking.
Correct. And in the city of New York, the chancellor is allowing those children to stay in school until their counting day so that they get their enrollment counts up and get fully funded, whereas the superintendents in Long Island are afraid to do so. So it's everything, it's mayhem. It is mayhem, really, with regard to the
It's got to be resolved. They have to do something. You know, I'm surprised. I'm so sorry that you're going through this.
Thank you, I appreciate your comments on that, and if I could call your office and if we can get a letter to the state senator, I would appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dolores. George Powell?
Good evening. My name is George Poval. I'm the Executive Director of All Our Energy. And I came tonight to speak about the balloon issue. Everybody's kind of been talking about it, and I want to just be really brief, mention a few things. Some of you have worked with us before. Councilman Blakeman just left, but he's one of the people who actually did a beach cleanup with us last year. And we've done about 20 beach cleanups over the last 2 or 3 years. And balloons have just become actually even more and more present each time. This summer, cleaning up on the South Shore here, the fewest number that we found is 14, and we found as many as 38. And the bottom line is that they're just totally not necessary because they're being actually put there by carelessness and by a lack of education that this is something that's really not good. And so that's why we are really in favor of taking action on this issue. I think it's something that the town really has a real opportunity to be stewards of your, wait, I gotta give you the number, 17,000 acres of wetlands and 180 miles of coastal waterways that you are the stewards of. And this is a really not a big ask to ask people not to throw stuff into the environment. And I think people, once they understand that, it's easily gotten. And I don't really think in the other places that they've done this that anybody is being prosecuted or persecuted for making a mistake. So I think that we can make a really strong change. I see here that you're willing to be out ahead on things like vaping. Like Councilman Blaken said, I even smoked 10 years ago. But we learned that it's not good. We can make a change. Once you know it's not really the best thing you could be doing, I think that we can make a change here. So I really look forward to seeing all of you at the next hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Bell, and thank you for your support for this important legislation. That's what we're trying to do. Barbara Thomas.
Good evening, Barbara Thomas from Massapequa. Briefly today, I just wanted to piggyback on what people have been speaking about having qualified people at the animal shelter and the importance of it. And I'd like to share with you a story of an adopter who adopted from the town of Hempstead Animal Shelter, and the bite history of the dog was not released to her. It was her and a daughter in the home. It was not a good placement. They tried to do everything in their power to keep that dog in the home because they loved the dog, but the dog became so territorial they were afraid to enter their own house. So it's obviously a placement that shouldn't have taken place, hidden bite history, and it's just dangerous all around. And we need qualified people to determine if these dogs are adoptable, if they're rescue only, or unfortunately, if a dog is dangerous.
I think we all agree with you. We do want to make sure that that doesn't happen. We don't want to see dangerous dogs adopted out into homes where they could pose a risk to the families.
There's no one qualified to determine if a dog is indeed dangerous. You really don't have anyone that can make that determination. And some of the dogs that are maybe some people are afraid of, they don't even get touched. So we're supposed to give a dog everything in our power we can to make them succeed. If they succeed, great. If they are indeed dangerous, then unfortunately we know what has to happen. But there's no one that can make that determination. So we can't be adopting out dangerous dogs. So, adopting out dangerous dogs, but then killing adoptable dogs. It goes against everything in the humane animal sheltering.
Right. We don't want to kill adoptable dogs. Certainly we don't want to terminate any or euthanize any dogs if we can avoid it. So we are going to be putting out that RFP for a trainer again. We'll reach out to the people that were discussed with Ms. Madden, put it out there. If you know anybody who is in that field, encourage them to respond to the RFP. Thank you, Ms. Thomas.
I have one more thing now. You and Mr. Lockeruba promised me at one of the past town board meetings that you'd get back to me about possibly giving a donation from the Tales of Hope Fund, which is public donations coming to the shelter, to Ulster County canines who rescued many of the dogs and now is caring for some of them.
I do recall that. Mr. Rod, did you give us an opinion on whether that was legally feasible?
We were advised, I can answer, because we were advised that the Tales of Hope Fund could not do a monetary contribution to any of these folks.
It's for training.
Okay.
Yes, they can.
It's for training.
Okay, so I'll finish my answer. But we have donated supplies and materials to those facilities that did take our dogs, blankets, food, other items. But as I said, we were advised that Tales of Hope couldn't make a monetary contribution to those organizations.
Who told you that?
The volunteers are the ones that brought the donations, not the town. And Ulster County Canines is caring for some of your dogs that you decided not to pick up. And the Tales of Hope Fund is indeed for training. So those dogs are now receiving training so that they can go to homes. They were sent there as dangerous dogs, but guess what? They're adoptable and they're being trained. So you can fund some of the training through the Tales of Hope. Thank you.
Mr. Rock, could you just give us a legal opinion on that, and then we'll share it with you, Ms. Thomas, okay?
I have to check it. I really don't know supervisor.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, I do not have any more slips. I hope everybody has a lovely evening, and a safe journey home. Okay, I'm sorry, you want...
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby, I just wanted to bring to your attention, we just found out that the home next door to ours, a foreclosed home, sold at auction for $1+ million. That we were astounded. No home on that block sells for more than maybe even $500,000. $600,000 raises red flags. $1 million sets off alarm bells all over the place. So you said earlier that people should know what's going on in their community, have a right to know what's going on in their community. So I'd like to find out what possibly could be the benefit of somebody purchasing a home for a foreclosed home that's going to need a lot of work for $1 million and right next door to us. That's just, we're just really, really, really curious about that. So maybe there's something we can do to find out, maybe get some information on that.
Really like your company.
What's that?
You must really like your company.
Yes. No, it's not. It's going to need like over $100,000 of work. It's run down on the inside. So the tenants who were there before no, it's identical to ours. It's like maybe 1,400 square feet, and not on a lot of land. Whereas the homes on the road that runs perpendicular to ours, those properties have a quarter acre of land a piece. So, and those aren't going for $1 million, nowhere near. So we're just curious as to why this house sold at auction for $1 million. Somebody really, really, really wants this, and we want to know why.
We'll try the best we can. Commissioner, would you be able to see what you can find out about that home? And it was foreclosed, right?
It was foreclosed.
Do you know who purchased it?
We don't know. Well, we don't know, but according to the deed, it's apparent. It looks like it's in the name of an attorney in trust.
What's the state of the address that the commissioner needs?
That's what he needs. He needs the address. Give him the address.
I'll give you the address. Okay.
We'll see what we can find out.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir?
Thank you very much, Supervisor and the board. I'll make it really quick. My name is Jay Blackman, 1566 Gary Street in East Meadow. Last year, around, I think it was December 11th of 2018, the board approved a $10,000 contract to Clearview Consultants that had to do with the solar farm in Oceanside, on the landfill. And I was just wondering, with all the stuff we've been hearing over the last 4 days, Greta Thunberg, I think her name is, and the way she admonished all the governments and the legislative bodies through the United Nations, And it just made it seem so imperative that, the time is now. We have to do something now. Not wait 10 years, not wait 5 years, but now. What's going on, what's happening?
I agree with you. We push that forward because we want to bring solar. Mr. Lockerover, would you like to provide more details?
Yeah, so Clearview is working with us not just on the landfill, but they're taking a comprehensive look at all of the town's properties to see if there are other solar opportunities that may be available to us. Once they're done with that review, they'll start to develop an RFP. They've been working with the town's engineering department on this, and we're hoping by the end of the year that we'll have something that'll go out for proposal.
Sounds good, but, we're talking about 9 months, so period of time from last December to now, I mean, what have they been doing?
No, understood, but as you mentioned originally, it was just with respect to the landfill. As you heard earlier, there was a debate about all the wonderful property that the town owns. So to take a look at all of that property takes a little bit of time. So, and to see where there's feasibility and availability to do solar or other opportunities, wind and things like that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Everybody have a lovely evening.